Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Tewksbury Planning Board. There being a quorum present to bring this meeting to order. First item on the agenda, the approval of the minutes of February 22nd, 2021.
I'll make a motion. So moved.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
On the motion, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Fratalia.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next item on the agenda is the committee reports, administrative action. We have a town planners report. Anything, Anna?
So there was no town plans report. I did send a correspondence memo regarding chapter 48A.
Okay, we'll do that at the, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda, 391 North Street, approval not required. Who's here for that? Amanda?
John.
Okay. And John? Hi there, John.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. But go ahead, you have the floor, or the screen.
Oh, okay, we didn't really expect to present other than you've got the plans there. It's a 2.3 or so acre parcel that was granted a variance for frontage. And the variance has been recorded, and therefore we're in front of you for a signature not required, or approval not required.
Okay, very good. Mr. Johnson,
I'm all set, Mr. Chair.
all right. Mr. Ryder,
I'm all set, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Fratalia,
Yeah, looks fine to me, Mr. Chairman. All set. Thank you.
very good. And the chair votes aye. And I'm in, boy, I'm screwed up. I'm all set too. We have a motion?
Motion to endorse the A&R plan.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Carroll. You did a great job.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Just roll call on that, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, roll call. Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Okay, yeah. Next item on the agenda, 85 Main Street, Burger King, non-substantial change determination. And who's here for that?
Jeff Benavides from the Haynes Group.
All right. You're all set. If you'd like to explain what you're doing. I know we have the plans here and the renderings, so that's good. Go right ahead.
Sure. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Basically, our client asked us to replace their roof system. With the roof system, there is an existing light band that runs the perimeter of the roof currently. With the proposal, we're looking to replace that existing light band, which currently is a fluorescent system, with a LED, more energy efficient light band. The new light band would be the same exact size and dimension, so all intents and purposes would be the same exact look that they have on the building currently. The reason for the change is basically for energy efficiency, to get rid of the fluorescent lamps and replace it with an LED system.
Good. Thank you. Board members, Mr. Fratalia.
Yeah, hello, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. Has this been done on other Burger Kings in the area as well?
Yes, sir. Yep. Throughout the Northeast and actually United States wide, they've been replacing all their light bands.
Okay.
And all the interior light fixtures as well.
And there's no lighting being sprayed onto the roadway at all, correct?
No, sir. No.
Okay. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any real issue with it. I assume it's going to look, or presume, it's going to look pretty similar to what's next door on Applebee's. And since we've kind of gone out of our way to try to make sure both sides, make sure they keep up their area and everything looks good, I have no problem with the repairs. The one thing I would want to put, or I'd like to put in, is that it remain in good upkeep and working order. I don't want this to be one of those things where half the lights stop working, so you got this weird red thing, then the big empty blank spot, and then the red again, because I think that just looks trashy. So I want to make sure it's written in there so that we can enforce it, that it be kept in, good upkeep and in working order at all times. Other than that, I'm all set.
Yeah, if I could add to that, that the benefit of the LED versus the fluorescent, the LED would be a continuous LED strip. So it would be all on or all off. If there was something wrong, that the whole thing would be
Okay.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Ryder?
I'm all set, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fratalia answered my question. I was wondering if this is something that's been done on others.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Very good. The only question I have is the looms of this, or the brightness of this, able to be turned down if it's necessary? Or is it one?
I believe we can dim them down. That's yes.
Okay. The only time, sometimes at places at night, they might want to turn it down, especially if you're closed. But just so in case something happens, sometimes you get spill, as Mr. Fratelli asked you, you get spillage out on the street, or it interferes with the stoplights. So that's what we don't want to happen. So if you have the ability, turn those down, that'd be great. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr.
Anybody
Chairman,
else? Yes.
the one thing I guess, I don't know if this can be done, but I think we'd probably kind of like to keep the two, both they and Applebee's, at about the same. So I think that might be a good gauge, because I think everybody thinks the Applebee one's all right the way it is. So if we
Yes.
could use that as a guide, so the two sides of that entranceway seem pretty similar,
Yep.
and that would probably be a good gauge. I don't know if everybody else feels
Absolutely.
okay with that.
That's a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
All right. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I've moved that we determine that this is a non-substantial change. I believe we have to do that first, right?
Yep.
All right, so I'll make that motion.
Okay. We have a second.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. And we have a motion?
Roll
We gotta
call
do
on
the
that
roll?
one.
Oh, thank you, Don. Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
chair votes aye. I'll back up again. Do we have a motion?
I'd make the motion to approve the request for the change in lighting along the roof for 85 Main Street, with the conditions that the brightness of it be set to approximately what the brightness is of the adjacent property at Applebee's. That the board retains the right, if it feels that the lighting is too bright, to ask that it be dimmed, and that that the expectation that it will be maintained in good condition and working order in perpetuity.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a
Good
good luck.
evening.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is 910 Andover Street, concept plan review.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, Mr. Plunkett.
I have Mr. John Sullivan with me in my office at this time. Doug Lees is on board as the engineering aspect of it. And also we have Mr. Gorman, John Gorman, who is one of the developers that will be one of the parties developing one of the sites that we're going to be talking about tonight. But we'll start, Mr. Chairman, with the 910, I'm sorry, we'll start with the 910 Andover Street.
Right.
This is the property that's located at the intersection of Andover and River Road. The intersection is undergoing a major upgrade and improvement right now. The site is approximately 4 acres. About 2 acres have been developed, 2 buildings on the lot. First building that was developed is the building with the Enterprise Bank operation that currently has a drive-through window going around the building and off to the left-hand side facing the locus with you back towards Andover Street. The second building is the building that is closer to the River Road area. It has the restaurant in it, and it's been fairly underutilized over the period for a few years now. What we're looking to do is to bring that to more, efficiency and get more worth and value out of it by adding a drive-through for the back building also, with the intent that we'd be putting in a coffee shop, and the drive-through would come around the back. You'd have sufficient area for the bailout lane, and then come off to a point where it would be in the same proximity as the vehicles leaving the bank drive-through lane. We'll have signage there for a complete stop, and it should be able to easily handle the convergence of the 2 drive-throughs, leaving the respective lanes. We actually had a preliminary pre-submittal IDR review, and some questions came out that very good, that we know what the town will be looking for. The signage would have to be clear, that they're looking for a lighting plan, but overall it was I think very well received. And again, it allows for the use of the premises that's going to be, more in keeping with the capacity or expectation from that site. As I say, right now it's fairly underutilized to allow for use of the building as you might anticipate for a development of that sort. I don't know if Doug wants to add anything right now, or if you just want to have any, field any questions from the board.
Yeah, fine. Thank you, Mr. Plunkett. Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a bit of concern about the 2 stops together. I know that's a little tight coming around the back of the bank there. What do you intend on the between the 2 stop signs? Is it going to be shrubbery there? Is that going to be cleared so you can see traffic on your right-hand side entering both stops?
Yeah, no, there wouldn't be anything that would be an impediment to visual ability to see clearly what's happening. And it's going to be the exit point So the traffic flowing through after doing the business will be, fairly staggered. And, we don't foresee any issue relative to the ability of people to come to a stop and then, give leeway to another car in order to have an orderly exit from that location. One thing that I know that came up, Doug, I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that one of the questions was to just make certain that, the cars coming from the proposed new drive-through turning there, coming down into that lane, that, they have a sweep path to show the ability of the vehicles to be able to maneuver that without any problem. And it's our expectation that that there's plenty of room there, but Doug will provide that sweep path analysis to show the ability of vehicles to be able to turn at that locus for the purposes of the going into the exit lane that comes along the left-hand side of the first building.
Okay. And then the relocation, just the relocation of the dumpster, I'm just concerned how that dumpster is going to be picked up driving in. Can that be, if that is still just a relocation to the farther point of the property, can the dumpster be scheduled so that you're not impacting the hours of the drive-through or the bank?
Yeah, there won't be any problem, and that would be part of the, business plan for the operation of the site anyways, to not have any interference with the business aspect of the drive-throughs, that they would come in, they would be scheduled so that, they'd be in and out at times that the lanes aren't going to be in use.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Eric.
All set, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you. Eric, could I jump on that just a little bit to add on?
Sure, absolutely.
I was concerned about that intersection also.
Mhm.
My thought is, if at the, we have a stop, is that a stop line or a stop sign?
It would be
The
both
two.
a stop bar with a stop sign. So there would be, each side would have a stop sign with the stop line.
Yep. My other thought was, especially on the, well, I'm not sure, but one or the other or both, if you could put at the stop line a rumble strip, so people would know, bring attention to that area. What do you think on that, Doug?
I think we could look into that. I was
I wouldn't want a speed bump, but I mean, that's crazy.
a rubble strip, yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of excited about the fact the coffee shop and the bank are kind of, people are lined up at the coffee shop in the morning. The bank's not open yet. And
Yep.
then, so it's kind of off, not the peak. I don't think the peak traffic would be at the same time. The bank is more after work, in the afternoon, and there's not really a lot of people going to the coffee shop drive-through at that time. It's mostly in the morning. I mean, there'll be some, obviously, throughout the day.
I know this is a concept plan, but what type of coffee shop is it?
Good coffee.
Yeah, it'll be it's not gonna be a franchise, it's
Good co-
franchise type, so, no green umbrellas, for.
Oh, okay, all right, you know where I'm going.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Plunkett. All right, very good. So
Just,
yeah,
Mr. Chairman, also in terms of the conflict between the drive-throughs, should note also that, at least currently the bank, the drive-through is very important to the bank, but the reality that the banking industry has changed significantly, that, a lot of banking today is done by, people who have the apps that all they have to do is, take the picture and do their deposits and everything else. I mean, there is still a volume there, but it's certainly not the volume that used to be present with the bank drive-throughs. But in any event, I think that the layout would allow for the, appropriate interaction between the two coming together in that exit. And, certainly take into account the suggestions made so far tonight.
I just again, thinking about the same thing. I'd like there possibly to be a caveat that if down the road, there proves to be a problem, that you might have to come back to have a modification on that intersection.
Yeah.
I just want that understood, that's all.
Sure, yeah, no, and say, I think with the rumble strip as proposed, the signage and everything else that, you know, and I understand the intent is to make sure that it's, it allows for the, you know, the safe egress from the site, so.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lees.
Thank you.
I guess you'll stay here for a while anyway, so. Board members, anything else? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mr. Battaglia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions I had was, if we had tenants or not. You said a coffee shop and a potential restaurant, so I'm guessing I'm questioning the amount of traffic that's going to be added to that particular parcel. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty busy spot now. And adding that many people to that location is going to bring more traffic to that intersection of River and Andover Street. So
Yeah.
I guess my concern would be for traffic, one of them, and that you have enough signage inside the plaza to direct people to get to where they're going once they get into the plaza. So those are my two big concerns. Any news on our type of restaurant that's going in there?
But it's not gonna be a restaurant, and, you know, it will be, the focus would be primarily on the coffee, and there'll be some, you know, like donuts, but not made on site, that the pastries would be brought from a off-site location, so as that was brought up during the initial IDR or the pre-submittal IDR hearing in terms of, you know, whether there was intent to have an actual restaurant operation on site. So the answer is no. It's going to be a coffee shop with some, you know, Danish pastry type items that you could order with your coffee. An operation like that, Mr. Fratelli, I think that it's going to be more a matter of not being a destination you know, locus. It's going to be more of a matter of pulling from the traffic that goes by there. The good thing from the perspective of a commercial site is that there is traffic going through, because that's what, you know, the businesses have to live by, the ability to capture traffic going by and you know, make a living off of it. But I would think that it's going to be more a situation where they're going to try to capture the people who are going by, that would go by there on the way to work or wherever they're heading on a daily basis, and capture them for their morning coffee. So, but no, it's not excuse me, it's not intended to be a restaurant.
Okay, Mr. Plunkett, thank you. Looking at the plans, I thought you were doing a coffee shop and a restaurant type of situation, but if it's all in one, correct?
Yeah, it'll be one operation at the back,
Okay.
that's primarily coffee, serving,
Okay.
you know, pastries that are not made on site.
So no breakfast per se, right?
Yeah, no, correct. That's
Okay. All right. Again, just so the signage is there, so we can direct people in and out. I think you should look at that at some point. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Battaglia. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess, you know, since it's a pre-discussion, when the plans do come in, I guess I'd like to see one page on here that will show us how many cars can queue up, maybe back to, I would say maybe showing back to you on your submittal plan. You see where you have the dotted line with the S's?
Yep.
Maybe how many cars would queue up maybe that far? Just as an idea, just to give us an idea of how many cars could queue up to the drive-through and go back to that line, because I'm thinking somewhere right around there is probably going to be where I would ask that we put in the, no queue beyond this point, somewhere in there, because at some point it's going to start backing up. If it got that bad, much beyond that, now you're starting to risk the cars coming in off of River Road. You know what I mean? If you get much beyond that, before it starts clogging up the entrance.
I agree that there'd be a limitation on
Yeah, because
queuing.
the old entrance, it wouldn't matter, but now that they're changing that and you don't have that mile wide entrance where people could just come in from anywhere, you kind of cut down to just that one space now.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really see it being much of an issue in terms of that clog up, other than maybe say Saturday morning when you might be doing banking and people are going to be looking for coffee.
Yeah.
That's about the only time I think weekdays, you're probably right. You're probably pretty safe, but Saturdays will probably be your day where you got to pay the most attention. The only other one, and this is more just out of a safety concern, or two safety concerns. One, I see where the dumpster is, which means anybody coming out of anywhere is going to have to cross over two lines of traffic to get things thrown away or whatever. Just something to make sure that there's a way for them to do that safely. And then the only other one is that last space in front of the existing building where it says, restaurant, convenience store, bank, the one to the far left. Somebody getting out of their car there is going to be, it would look like stepping out into the lane for the cars coming out. So what, if anything, might be able to be done there just to make that a little safer spot when someone steps, pulls in and then steps out of their car?
Yeah.
That they're not stepping right out into traffic coming at them.
Oh, I believe, do you have
Like the other end has that little island piece. I don't know if
Right.
there's a way to maybe put something similar in on the other end, just as an extra little buffer of safety for the person who steps out of their car and they don't, without thinking, step right out into somebody coming out of getting their coffee or their money.
Yep.
Yeah, there is a lot of room there, so I'm sure we can look at doing something. That's a good idea.
All right. Other than that, I'm all set.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. My last question is, where do you intend to put the menu board?
Where would the menu board just be right?
Probably be right up against the existing building where we put the key, the addition on. Probably be right up against the building.
So at the curb here, or?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, I mean, what we'll do, we'll locate that on the plan when it's submitted. But the intent would be that right as you see on the plan, the turn going into the lane would be that at the curb there near the would be the board for choices, the menu board. But we'll look at that specific location when the plan is ready for submittal.
Okay, I understand that, but my only concern is this. If the menu board is put on that island, let's say, where it says, one way, and then the island to the left, to the right of the last parking space, if you put the menu board there, you only have enough area for 2 or 3 cars to be queued to pick up. So unless they have a lot of people in there making coffees and making things together, I would think it's going to be a little difficult. Normally, the menu board is half the building and in the back, away from the pickup. If you follow what I mean, Mr. Lee,
Yeah.
do you understand that?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I've seen them all sorts of ways. I've seen them close and far away. You're right. It'll only probably be 3 car lengths away, 4 car lengths away.
Yep.
To make the order. But if they're pre-made donuts and coffee, it's not like they're putting together sandwiches or making burgers. They're just grabbing a pastry and pouring a cup of coffee. It shouldn't be.
Yeah. I mean, the normal coffee shop is fine. But again, if it was the Starbucks type coffee, well, they don't make those. They don't pour coffee and put the cream and sugar in and give it to you. They have to blend it and all that stuff. So you'd be in line for a long time. So that's my
I
only.
don't think we intend to have baristas here.
Mr. Chairman?
It'll be people pouring a cup of coffee, not a barista.
Yeah.
It'll
Yes,
be
Mr.
good
Chairman.
coffee, but
That's
no
it.
fancy design in the cream.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Could I just ask, when they bring the submittal in, could they possibly just in comparison, possibly give us, if you know, the coffee that would be at the corner of Main and Chandler, about how far their board away from their window is, as well as the one at the corner of Shawsheen and Main. They're both in the gas stations. I'm just
Yep.
curious how many cars those have. Because they're sort of along the same what you're saying, Mr. Fowler, how
Yeah.
close they might be. I'm just
Mm.
curious how they might compare to those two when they bring it in, if they could.
We can look at that. Yep.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Board members, we're all set?
Yes, thank you,
All set,
Mr. Chair.
Very
All
good.
set.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, 24 Pleasant Street, a concept plan. And Mr. Plunkett, I believe you're here again.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lees?
And,
Yep.
we have the same team on board, Mr. Lees, Mr. Gorman. Actually, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Gorman is for the last submittal.
Okay.
Actually, might
Very
be
good.
this submittal too, but, so this is the Sycamore Hall site, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman. If you recall, about 2-3 years ago, we had come and obtained a special permit for the build out of the site. And it was for the purposes of a bank with a drive-through window. The overhaul or the significant changes in the banking industry over the years, unfortunately, resulted with that concept not being viable. There were efforts made, there were a number of, inquiries, but nothing panned out. So the site is not viable for a drive-through banking institution. So this proposal here would be same as with the bank, that the raising of the carriage house, and also the same with the bank, purpose of trying to preserve and have result in updates and rehab of the Sycamore Hall street. Sycamore Hall has a long history in town. Mr. Sullivan was giving me some information that it was once, what was the original? Coggins Hall, that at the time that Coggins Hall and the Brown Tavern, which is now the bank, were two of the primary meeting places in town. So the intent here is to, again, preserve the Sycamore Hall building.
Yep.
And under the TCOD, build a 8-unit residential building in the back, have 4 units in Sycamore Hall, 1 being commercial, 3 being residential. During the preliminary or the pre-submittal IDR, there was a question in terms of the spaces and the concern. This was from Mr. Hardiman, that what's shown on the plan that was submitted to you, 7 spaces on one side and 4 spaces on the other going up towards Main Street, that it would not allow them to turn around and go back to the 2-way traffic going in and off of Pleasant Street. But Mr. Lees has come up with a design that would allow for the same parking spaces and allow in the area where the parking would be located to have turnaround so that they could still go back towards the Pleasant Street.
Okay, good.
Their intent was not on leaving on the Main Street exit, that would still be a right turn only exit coming off of the site, going right onto Main Street.
Yay.
And basically, we see this as, the potential to, produce some residential components, preserve the Sycamore Hall. And I think that the benefit, it'll be a benefit in terms of upgrading that site, and it would be a good development proposal for the location.
All right. Mr. Lee's heard me cheer. Um, uh, Two of the things you've changed are things I had written down on my plan, so that's great. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just there's a couple of questions, I guess. I mean, obviously it's prelim, so it's, there isn't much to see on this yet, but what do you envision as far as what that building would look like?
Well, actually, the intent would be that it will be the same type of design as the design for the building on the 960 Main Street. So if you look at the renderings from Mr. Jack Sullivan, Galvin, and Sullivan plans for the 960 Main Street, it would be very similar to that. It's basically going to be the same format. So it'd be a very upscale, build out, and it would be actually somewhat of a unifying theme in the central area of what we're trying to create is a downtown or a town center. So there would be somewhat of a unifying theme with the structure here and the structures on the 960 adjacent to the Foster School build out.
Good.
Okay. So to me, obviously, if something's going to go in there, I'd want it to look as much like, sort of the Sycamore Hall as it can, to keep with that look. If the idea is going to be to have two buildings there that kind of look like houses, to have them sort of have that old look, I suppose, as much as they can. Is there, I don't know if it's a setback issue, or because you're just talking about where the spaces are going to be and whatnot. Is the reason for the building being back in that way as opposed to up further to allow the spaces to be in the back? Is that due to setback issues? Is it just how you feel like it looks better because it's set back? Is there any particular reason it can't be further up towards the street and then the parking would go in the back?
You really need to have the exit as far to the left on the site onto Main Street. So if you bring the building down towards Main Street, you're going to push the exit from the site over closer to the Pleasant Street, Main Street intersection. And
okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess how would it look with the spaces out there and the people trying to get in and out of those right where you're coming out onto the street? It's the two are pretty close together, but I don't know. I guess we'll see how that fits. I know you're also saying that there's a way that this is going to look a little different when you submit it anyways, because you're going to make more room to be able to go both directions. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, except for the exit itself, but the area where the cars would be.
Right. The parking will be perpendicular and the aisle will be 24 feet, so the cars can back out and head out to Pleasant Street.
Okay. I mean, we'll have to see how it all looks when you bring it out. I mean, I'm a little less concerned with the cars coming out in a Pleasant, because we now know that the fire station is now being removed as being one of the things, or it will be, as one of the things that needs to be working in that area, because it's going to end up across the street now with the new building. So that's one alleviation. So it's not the fire station, the schools, et cetera, et cetera. You at least get that one more piece taken out. So otherwise, for now, for what you got in front of me, I'm all set.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Johnson. Mr. Ryder.
I believe Mr. Ryder just had to step away for a minute.
All right. He's late. Okay, Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess a couple of concerns I had. Mr. Plunkett, could Pleasant Street be a in only and rather than having an exit there too? And having it one way in, one way out? Would that solve any of your issues?
Just put it in the car. I just need it for the morning.
Hello?
Hi. If you Pleasant Street as a one-way in only, the only way to exit the site would be to come out to Main Street and take a right and head south towards Wilmington. So anybody that wanted to head towards Lowell would have to make a big loop around, but come back up Pleasant Street to the lights and take a left. So
I'm aware of that. My only concern is Pleasant Street does back up with traffic there most days with school and traffic right at that Pleasant and Main intersection. Even with the firehouse gone, you know, in our last discussions, when you were going to have the bank there, that was always going to be an issue with people coming in and coming out and trying to take a left turn and a right turn coming out of that Pleasant Street exit or entrance. So I don't think it's changed too much just because of the location of the property, but I'd be concerned about people trying to get out and blocking traffic and trying to get out of that driveway. So that was one of my only concerns. I don't see much more than that. So, but
All right.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Fratalia. Well, you covered two
Mr.
of the
Ryder
things.
is returned.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ryder, if you're on.
Yes, I'm back. Thank you. Sorry about
have
that,
the
Mr.
floor.
Chair. I had one concern as well, and I want to echo Mr. Fratelli's understanding. We do have a new school being installed, being built currently right now on Pleasant Street. Traffic is going to increase, and it's going to increase for a longer duration of time in the morning as well as the afternoon with the release, the multiple release times for the high school, the Ryan School, and the new school that's currently being built. So I'll echo Mr. Fratalia. Anyone that's coming out onto Pleasant Street, anyone that's sat in that light as I do, you know, much prior to the pandemic, it was you'd sit at that light for 4 or 5 cycles, and only 3 or 4 cars would get through. And any vehicle that was trying to get out of the town hall parking lot had a challenge. And now we want to add another parcel that's going to try and take a left and block traffic that's going through the center of town. I just think it's going to be a significant impact in that area. I just think coming out onto Pleasant Street is not the right option for that parcel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you. I'm not going to add any more on that. 2 people have talked about it, but obviously there are going to be some handicapped spaces on this site. I just hope between the office, the 3 units, the office in Sycamore Hall, in the 8 units in the residential building, I hope that your calculations for parking spaces with handicap spots are sufficient. So if you can take another look at that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lees. And I have to take a 2-minute recess. I will not, if that's all right with everybody, before we go on to the next part. So Mr. Lees, Mr. Plunkett, why don't you hang around a bit and I'll be back in 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. You've got that? Ryan, I'm back.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we're still live, so
Okay.
whenever you'd like to get going.
Mr. Johnson and Mr. Ryder back are here.
I'm here.
Okay, very good. Hi, Eric. I like that. We're all set. Mr. Plunkett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, just so let me advertise what we're talking about. Next item on the agenda is 960 Main Street, a concept plan. Go right ahead, Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the 960 Main Street site immediately adjacent to the Foster School development. This was permitted a year or so ago, and actually came in for a extension on the special permit that runs through September of 2021. There is a development crew on board, ready to move forward. We're dealing with moving forward right now. Issues have come up or questions have come up that we're looking to address. Primarily, it's a matter in terms of what we're looking to do is that front building that was to be all commercial, that we would allocate one unit to be commercial in nature for the TCOD. This is again under the TCOD overlay, and take the increased usable floor area by adding an upper level in terms of from the half story that was currently on the second level to an actual full level, and go from, you know, the all commercial to one commercial and 5 additional residential spaces. The renderings by Gavin and Sullivan show what the proposal would be, and even to the rear building, not change anything per se, other than upgrading some of the architectural specifics to try to have it more, again, like a uniform sense of identity with the Foster School next door in terms of the color themes and the build out or the structure of the buildings themselves. This is something that, you know, we have a team ready to move forward, but this is what we're looking to do in order to make these changes so that we can get going on the development. One of the things in terms of going from
A couple of things is I know.
Hello.
I thought someone was asking a question. I'm sorry.
No, I don't know where that came from.
I'm not sure either. You know, one of the things in terms of the parking layout would remain the same, and one of the results from the changeover from the commercial to the partial commercial and the residential would be that there would actually be excess parking spaces generated relative to the parking requirements that are set under the bylaws. So the back building would remain as proposed, other than some upgrades to the architectural details of the building. The front building, the footprint would remain the same. The floor space would be increased by the add-on of the second floor being usable space, and then have it 5 additional residential units rather than all the commercial component. I mean, again, this would be, if you look at the renderings, I think that you could anticipate this in line with the other developments that are going on in this area, together with the fire station that's being built. Will start to give a new upgraded feel to our town center, to go hand in hand also with our upgraded town hall that was the result of the CPA funds that allow that to happen. So I think that this is something that would be would be advantageous, a benefit, and would look, be a beautiful addition to the town center. And with that, we'll open up to any questions.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Mr. Plunkett. Board members, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, one of my big concerns we're looking for a reduction in the commercial space. That's, you know, the commercial space makes this allowable in the town center. And I think coming in right away, looking for a reduction and adding more residential, that's not the intent of the bylaw. You know, I'll be honest, I can't support that. Right out of the get-go, we're looking to develop a parcel and we're already looking to reduce the key requirement that makes it allowable to have residential in the town center. So I just, that's a no-go for me. But understanding it's allowable to develop this and providing it meets the guidelines, but I don't support giving the exemption for the reduction in the commercial. But that's all for right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess one of the questions I had, Mr. Plunkett, is was there always parking on the left side of the complex in the past proposal? I don't recall. Or is it all inside the lot line?
There's been no change at all to the parking layout.
Okay. So those parking
Right.
spaces on the left side of the development were always there or are always there, so,
Yeah, that's the parking layout as originally approved.
okay. All right, is there any discussion about any affordable units in this plan, Mr. Plunkett?
No.
Okay. With that, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. We'll see how the new plans come through.
Thank you, Mr. Fratalia. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But we're treating how are we treating this? Is this is a when this comes in, it's going to be a modification of what was done before, or is this would this be if we're treating this as something new?
I would say it's certainly not something new in that the sense that we've had the approval of the site development already. You know, I would consider this to be a modification of the special permit to allow the changes that were requested here.
Okay. So then the idea isn't that this is we're not going to have to well, the idea would be then we're not going to redo this entire thing. It's basically just, are we okay with the real difference is the okay in reduction of commercial space versus what was already approved.
Correct.
Okay.
I guess, you know, that brings up the logistical problem in terms of how this would be handled relative to submittal, if it's going to be a submittal that would require, you know.
Well, I'm asking the question partly because of Mr. Fratalia's question just now as to whether or not, I mean, if we've already really approved it, then going back and ask, you know, changing things about affordable units and things like that, to me, wouldn't make sense. But if this is being treated as something more new, then it's at least something that's going to come up as a discussion point. And what I don't want is we get into the, you know, into the process and everything's been submitted, and then one side is saying, you know, that's not fair, and the other side saying, well, no, that's not fair. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure that if we start down this road, when we do so, everybody's on the same page as how we're thinking about this and what is or is not on the table when we're discussing it. Because I don't, you know, like I said, I'm not saying I have an opinion one way or the other right this second. I'm just saying I want to be sure we don't get into one of those back and forths after that people aren't all in agreement of what we're looking at.
I would say to put it into perspective, Mr. Johnson, I hopefully put it in perspective relative to the question, is that this is a site that has been approved. That proposal that we're submitting, tonight for review is one in which, again, there's nothing being changed to the back building other than some architectural detail to make it more conforming with the building next door, as per the plans as submitted by Gavin and Sullivan. But that would not change. Parking layout would not change at all. That the order, there's already been an order of conditions for the site, which is not going to change at all. Because nothing's changing relative to footprint of any buildings or anything on this. The only thing that's changing is to that front building, that we're still within the same footprint, but changing the, the use of that building. And I understand the question relative to the TCOD and intent, but, one of the.
Look, I guess this is sort of what I mean. Like we're taking these all separate, but sort of in tandem, what we just did. And I'm trying to decide in my own head sort of the difference between, say, this and the one we just looked at, which is your concept for the corner of Main Street and Pleasant no longer works. And that's why that's coming in. So that residential addition in that case is, to me, somewhat more of a wholesale change. That's completely different than what was originally done. This maybe isn't quite as much. So one of the questions might come back to, in the event you didn't get what you're asking for here, is the project prepared to move forward regardless?
The project is ready to move forward, provided there's some sort of concession relative to economic requirements to move forward. And I would think that we would be able to come to some sort of understanding, whatever that might be, with the town. To account that the whole idea.
So let me ask you a question, just so I understand too well. So in that front building, what was previously there was all commercial, right?
Correct.
And what would be going in there now would be 1 commercial unit, 2 residential on the bottom, and 3 on the top.
Correct.
Okay. I guess to sort of Mr. Ryder's point, I guess I'd feel more comfortable with this if, say, the bottom 3 units were commercial, with the residential on top, just from, I don't know, just feels different to me, somewhat. And, obviously it's still a reduction in the overall idea that the entire front building was commercial, and it would be getting those residential units in the top. But, having the 2 on the bottom floor, and you ended up with 5-to-1 in the building, I don't know. And then in the event that it's pushed, if you're pushing it to the point where it becomes 5-to-1 in that commercial building, in terms of how many more units you're going to end up with, now I start to wonder whether or not I feel like this is a much more wholesale change, in which case now everything's back on the table of what we might want to ask for or whatever, because, what you're asking for, what we want to give kind of, comes into, conflict again. So I don't know. I mean, so, right now we're dealing with concepts. So those are sort of my concepts of this,
Sure.
On where I feel like I'd get more comfortable with it. If I really felt like that front building had a bit more of a commercial residential mix, especially knowing that those 2 bottom units, I mean, they're literally right there in the middle of town. They're right there on the street, right on the sidewalk. It almost feels like whoever those residential people were, they'd be too close to sort of the hustle and bustle of the center as it is. If they're on the ground floor, I feel like when they're up above, it's not as much. And, then you could have your small office spaces there on the bottom floor. But, I'm just one, so that's just my thoughts.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Chair.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
Johnson.
can I comment for a second?
Go right ahead, Mr. Patalia.
Looking at the agenda tonight, I thought looking at it, the concept plan review was for a new plan. I wasn't, anything. My view was not, a modification, because it doesn't say anything about modification. So, and I look and listen to Mr. Plunkett. It's a pretty substantial change. So, I mean, it's not a minor change. It's a pretty substantial change, having the second floor and a total change of the front building. So, so again, that was my view looking at it. when it was explained to me as a new plan and not a modification, but just for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Patalia.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask one quick question?
Go right ahead, Mr. Ryder.
As is Mr. Fratalia just stated, as Mr. Johnson, if we're working off of this was the original, it would have been nice to have the original information with us. So I was under the same impression as Mr. Fratalia that this was a new concept plan. So I think that's a bit of concern. So if this is in fact for the next time that this gets presented to us, it's a modification. If we can have in the packet all the original information that was submitted so we can look at in comparison. And also too, next time if for the people at home, that this can be shared on the screen. Understanding this is difficult time, people can't see, but I think this would help if this is something that you could have shared on screen next time, Mr. Plunkett. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Lees, you can do that, right?
Yep.
There you go. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. The only question I have is to not to ad lib what has already been said by the other three members, but I agree. But the only thing that I look at the plan architecturally, and I look at the Foster School to the left, that's a fine structural building, nice appointments. The dormers in the roof for the third floor, and the roof in the front building is nothing. So I think some architectural advancements should be done. I mean, even when you look at the plan on the picture on the right, you can see the enhancements to the structure of the apartment building just out of the corner of the Foster School. So I think a lot has to be done to make that building look presentable, especially for something that's right on Main Street. But other than that, I'm all set. Mr. Plunkett, anything?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, just to get to the nature of the change, and I know that there has been, that this would not be the first time that we've had a situation come before the board relative to addressing the fact that the amount of commercial space isn't necessarily something that was viable once the construction was about to begin. And I believe that there have been some changes to proposals before the board. And again, getting to the point of the the underlying purpose to try to get people willing to come in and invest and upgrade and have a development that will take the Route 38 corridor and change it significantly relative to no longer being outdated or dilapidated buildings, but new buildings. And I understand, Mr. Chairman, with your suggestions about the details on the front building with potential of dormers and things of that sort. Mr. Sullivan, actually, I think he had later today something that he was relative to some of the detail, that's something that but the concept of how this would be handled, I would say it would be of a submittal of a modification of the special permit that is issued, because there are major components that will remain unchanged, and it's focusing only on this front building. So it's not a new submittal for the site per se. It's going to be a modification of the site to address issues that have come up relative to the build out of the site and the economic viability of the build out of the site. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
All right, Mr. Plunkett. Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Very good. Thank you. All right.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Next item on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yes? Someone
No, so
say
thank you.
something? Mr. Lees? Oh, okay.
Good to see you,
Mr. Lees.
Mr. Fowler.
Oh, good to be seen. Yeah, thanks. Okay, good. Next item on the agenda. 2254 Main Street. Matthew Doughty on behalf of Tewksbury House of Pizza, signed special permit.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm
Hello.
here with Matt Doty. My name's Joe Marie O'Mahony. I'm here as his friend tonight, but I'm also a local attorney.
Very, very good. How are you?
Good.
Mr.
Nice to
Fowler,
see
can you read the public
I'm sorry.
hearing?
I'm sorry. Oh,
Chairman, make a motion to waive
that's
the
right.
public meeting.
To wait. Thank you. Waive the reading of the public notice.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you. Great ahead.
So
Yep.
as the application shows, gentlemen, we're really just looking to replace the signage component of the awnings and the freestanding sign that already exists on the property.
Right.
Mr. Doty bought the property at the end of 2019, 2020.
January 1st of 2020.
And he's just looking to rebrand the Tewksbury House of Pizza to a new, that was the whole purpose of buying it, was to rebrand it away from Tewksbury House of Pizza. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, he wasn't able to do it immediately. He's now in a position to do it. And he's wants to use the same bones and just replace kind of the vinyl. But unfortunately, when he applied to do that, he was told that it was non-conforming. As far as we can tell from the research, it was non-conforming at least back to 2006 when the assessor took pictures, but we believe it could have even gone back before that when the previous owners had bought it. We did do the measurements. We received a request for some additional information, so I do have that for you. One of the requests was the awning to the building wall. It's 21.5 inches, which I believe conforms with section 5254. The freestanding sign, we didn't do an exact measurement because we couldn't get a big enough, ladder crane over there, but we believe it's under 18 feet tall. It's definitely under the 20 feet tall requirement of section 5253. And it's 16.4 feet away from the street line. Unfortunately, we believe it's only 4 feet away from the side property line. But again, that sign had been installed at least back into, we think, the late 80s from what we can tell from the internet pictures that were taken of that time. And we'd also contend that neighboring businesses have similar kind of boundary freestanding signs up. So we're just asking that you grandfather in the current signage and allow Mr. Doty to just replace the vinyl component of it. He's not expanding any of the dimensions. It's going to look exactly as it does now, except have an updated color and name.
Yeah, I'm just getting the wrap changed on it.
Right. I understand. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have, does the petitioner have the comments from the town planner?
Yes, that's what I just addressed, the
So
measurements.
I want to make sure you weren't just, you had these, but you were working off them, correct?
Correct.
All right. I mean, I have no issue other than the one example you gave here. So, I mean, based on the way it looks, the entire thing is blue. I presume that that's not true.
So if you look, the current sign right now is kind of a teal green.
Yeah.
And it says Tewksbury House of Pizza. He's basically going with a more updated blue, and it's going to be the Bluebird Cafe.
Sandwiches.
Sandwich. Oh, I'm
Bluebird
sorry.
sandwiches.
Bluebird sandwiches. I call it the Bluebird Cafe. I think he should have live entertainment, but that's a different application for a different night. So yes, it's going to be all blue with an updated name, but it's going to have the same, again, the same components that it has now.
All right. Okay. Go ahead. You gonna say something?
No, go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
I mean, otherwise, I'm fine with it. I mean, it's not that not that big a difference from what you're already seeing there. I don't see what the issue is going to be. We're not moving anything. We're not really changing anything other than your business name has changed. You know, I'll let Mr. Fowler let you know about the address. Other than that, I'm all set.
No, that's Mr. Battaglia. Mail drop and an address. Go right ahead.
I'm all set, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Battaglia. Mr. Battaglia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to take the effort right now to applaud you for staying in business in Tewksbury.
Thank you.
I have no problem with the sign. Whatever works at this stage. Again, thank you for staying around and keeping the business going. Only reason why you're here is because of the sign requirements and so forth and so on. But I hope you continue to do well, and I have no problem voting for what you're looking for at the sign.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Mr. Ryder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I will thank the applicant. I know it's been difficult, and if we can keep the restaurants in town, anything we can do is a big help to you. As Mr. Fowler stated, can we put the address number on that? I thought Vinny would have grabbed that, but can you put the address on the sign? It does help significantly. The fire department or your patrons looking. Is that something that can be done?
Absolutely.
Right below, somewhere on there.
It's actually part of our bylaw.
We can have that put in, no problem.
Yeah,
okay.
Very good.
Anna, if you could, Anna, if when they come in for the information, if you could give them the new bylaw, that way they can make sure that is compliant.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. So now Mr. Ryder took away everything I was going to say, so that's good. That's fine. I'm happy to see you guys being able to do something down there.
Okay.
Obviously, to refresh the area can do nothing but help.
Yeah, we're very much looking forward to moving on to new things around there.
Very good. I like that. I like that a lot. I thought there was something else I wanted to say, but I don't think so. I'm all set.
Mr. Chairman?
Anybody? Yes. Yes, Anna.
I'm sorry.
No,
This is
go ahead.
Anna
No.
McGinty.
Yes, I know it is. Hi.
I'm sorry. I got disconnected from the meeting. I don't know if I missed anything.
What were you going to ask if it came up?
Have you guys closed this hearing, or are you still proceeding with it?
Well, I want to open up to the audience. in
Okay.
case-
I didn't know
yeah.
where I left off. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to, no one else from the board? Hearing none, I'm back to the audience. Anybody in the audience, Brian, any calls?
We have no callers at this point, Mr. Chairman, but as usual, we are about a minute behind.
Okay, very good. We'll wait.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
While
Mr.
we're waiting
Johnson.
to see if anyone from the audience calls in, could we just have Miss McGinty just run us through the waivers that we're going to need for this, that if we do the motion, that we've got it all squared away?
Yep.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. So they requested a waiver for section 5252, item A for the, what is it? To allow the height to exceed 3 feet to allow for a height of 4 feet for the attached sign. And then I had heard about the pre-existing sign that it is 16 feet from the street lot line, but it's 4 feet from the side lot line. So I believe you would need a waiver for that side lot line.
Okay.
And that's the only two ones that I would say for the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
Because she addressed comment number 2 for section 5254.
Good.
Yeah.
So the 4 feet waiver, I'm sorry, I just want to make, that's section 5253 that we're asking for a waiver from the side lot line. Is that
Yes,
correct?
to allow
Thank
for
you.
4 feet.
Yes. All right. Okay. Anyone, Brian?
We have no callers, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you very much. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. Someone want to take the motion?
Roll
Just need
call,
a-
Mr.
need a
Chairman.
Roll call.
No. On the motion, Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
Mr. Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder.
Aye.
By the time I remember this all the time, we'll be back in live. That's good. On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder.
Aye.
Very good. And the chair votes aye.
We need a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the waivers?
Yeah.
We did that.
Yes, we did that.
You do them individually, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the waiver for 5252A.
is that that's the setback?
Yeah, no, that's the
height.
the height. That's the first one. That's the height.
Okay, do you want to?
Do you want to do them together or you want to do them
Yeah,
separate?
why don't we do them all?
Okay, and then
So,
including
Just, Mr. Ryder, just
Yes.
one second. So in the note from Ms. McGinty, it's asking us to first have the finding of fact for that. So
Okay.
just that,
There's the
obviously
reason,
it's to
yeah.
the town's benefit. It
Yep.
doesn't really change from the sign that it's already there, other than a color change, and therefore is not in any way a detriment to the town. And the improved and new sign would be actually a benefit. I believe that would cover the
Yep.
findings of fact. Is that
Yep.
Ms. McGinty?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so with
Very
those
good.
findings of fact, then I guess we would then move to Mr. Ryder's motion that he's making. I apologize for interrupting.
No,
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So I'll continue and also
Yeah.
section 5253, approve the waiver, and that's on the side setback.
Very good. Do we have a second on that?
Second,
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Very good. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Good luck.
Okay.
Gentlemen,
Mr. Chairman, now we have to vote on the actual approval of the sign, because that was just the waivers.
There you go. Do we have a motion?
So make a motion to approve the signed special permit.
Second.
We have on the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Again, thank you very much. It's
Have a
fun.
good night.
Thank you,
Thank
Don.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Yes.
You're welcome.
Don, if you don't come someday, we're going to be SOL. All right. Next item on the agenda is 1800 Main Street. Tewksbury Realty Ventures, LLC, special permit. Do we have a motion to waive the reading of the public notice?
So
So
move,
moved.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll take the second then. Let Mr. Fratalia have it.
There you go. On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Yep. Opposed, the ayes have it. Ditto. Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Go right ahead. You have the floor. 1800 Main Street.
Sure.
Who's here?
Good evening, board. Can you guys hear me?
Who's speaking?
This is Casey with Solely Engineering. I'm
Okay.
here on behalf of the applicant.
Very good.
Do you mind if I share my screen?
No, go right ahead.
All right. Let me know if you guys see it. All set? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. For the record, my name is Casey Birch. I'm a civil engineer with Solely Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Tewksbury Realty Ventures LLC, for an application for special permit, section letter C, use number 19, for a coffee shop and drive-through component located at 1800 Main Street, the site of the existing eastern bank.
All right.
Just a little overall view. The property is approximately 1.3 acres. It's located in the commercial zoning district. It's bound by Main Street to the south, commercial property to the west and east, and a residential complex to the north. A little zoom in of the existing conditions. The site is currently improved with a 3,785 square foot masonry building that once, as I mentioned earlier, occupied by the Eastern Bank facility. Access to the site is currently accessed via a 16-foot wide drive off Main Street to the south here, and the egress is provided via a 17-foot wide drive off of Main Street located north of the access drive. There is a driveway that connects the two properties to the north in this property, which we will be maintaining as part of this project. We do plan to maintain all access and egress as they currently are for this redevelopment. The majority of the parking is around the building, and the rest of the property is pretty much pavement with consisting of the existing site drive and a dumpster area in the back. This is a little, this is an area with our overlay of our site improvements that we're planning to do. Let's go to a little easier to see. The project proposes to redevelop the site and retrofit the existing building to accommodate a 2,915 square foot coffee shop. The remaining of the space located in this area will be used as storage for the coffee shop. And this space is approximately 985 square feet. The coffee shop will include a drive-through component with a pickup window. This drive-through will have a order board, a pre-menu board, and a menu board. And it is large enough to stack about 11 cars before encroaching into the parking area. It also has a bypass lane, and that lane will be used to access the dumpster pad location, which we have in the northern corner here, which has 3 receptacles. The dumpster will be enclosed with a wooden board-on-board fence about 7 feet high. Now, the front of the property, we are planning to maintain the existing access egress drives and a portion of the parking in the front, with the only modifications really only being some restriping is needed and possibly resurfacing with patchwork if needed as well. As I mentioned before, we're planning to maintain this connection drive to the adjoining northern property. We are providing 25 parking spaces with 2 ADA accessible parking spaces to the south of the building here. We are also improving the property with a 350 square foot patio area for patrons to sit, as well as a walk-up window in that area as well for online orders, particularly. Just to give a little area of the real disturbance, the redevelopment proposed to disturb a little over 18,000 square feet, the majority of which is in the location of the northern corner here. And that'll be the pavement, full depth pavement and landscaped area that we are proposing, which we are increasing the landscaped area of this property by 7,353 square feet. So that'll largely improve stormwater and the aesthetic look of the property. We're proposing to maintain a similar drainage pattern to that of the existing condition. Currently, the site drains to the east and then off into the neighboring property to the east, which is the residential property, and then the commercial property. What we're planning to do is maintain the similar grades. That way we can, the majority of the site can just be resurfaced, and then everything will go to a leak off that will go to a level spreader that will actually hold some storage and then spread out and then go into a kind of a grassline swale that will travel in a similar pattern that it does today. This is our demolition plan, SEC plan. We are proposing to demo curb and this pavement area within the hatched area that you see. And we will provide SEC measures, soil erosion sediment control measures in the form of silt sacks at all existing catch basins and a composite filter sock at the eastern portion down gradient of the drainage area, as well as additional composite filter socks around any stockpile area that we have. We are planning to demo the existing canopy. It's pretty much the only thing on the building that we are modifying drastically, and that is to make way for a new pickup window further closer to towards Main Street and to accommodate that drive-through and bypass lane. We will plan to maintain the SEC measures in place throughout construction. We're also providing a construction fence, and we'll maintain until all pavement is installed and the landscape areas are fully stabilized. The landscape plan, the front of the site will be improving the frontage of the property with a grouping of upland shrubs and grasses consisting of inkberry, andromeda, some chokeberry, mugo pine, and some blue stem grasses. The southern property line here along here will provide some understory trees consisting of shade bush, magnolia, and white fringe, and accompanied with some shrubs consisting of pepper bush and mountain laurel and some rhododendron. The rear of the property will consist of arborvitaes and bayberry shrubs with some New England erosion control and restoration mix where the water will be flowing pretty much. And then in the north, we'll have a red maple here with some rhododendron and a cluster of azaleas. The lighting plan, we're proposing 3 new light fixture poles. The fixtures will be dark sky compliant, and our lighting will also be providing wall packs around the building. These fixtures will also be dark sky compliant. And then I believe my
I'm back.
colleague Kevin is on, and he's here to discuss the traffic. So let me just go back to an overall view of the aerial.
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Soley. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Massachusetts with Soley Engineering. I was actually supposed to intro the project, but of course, from a timing standpoint, I got kicked off my machine right as you finished up the last sign permit application. So I was a little delayed, which is why you probably heard some silence when you first said, go ahead. But from an intro standpoint, we're here to talk about the project. And I was going to let Casey run through some of the details, and I'll talk about some of the traffic. And then we kind of wanted to, gauge the commission's thoughts on some comments. We did receive some comments from the town planner and the town engineer, which we can provide responses to, but some of those I wanted to discuss with the board and understand your concerns. But from a traffic standpoint, we did prepare a traffic impact study as part of the proposed project. And what we do is whenever we're doing a traffic study, we want to understand what the potential traffic impacts might be from our proposed development. So we actually went out and did new turning movement counts along Main Street at our site driveways and also the intersection with Livingston Street. We did that in January, and then we actually provided a COVID adjustment based on coordination with the Mass DOT and looking at some of their continuous count stations that they have throughout the area. So we actually grew those trips to represent the fact that everyone knows traffic volumes right now are down due to COVID. So what we did is we looked at, the existing operating conditions for our driveways. Obviously, the bank is not currently in operation, so we actually didn't take any credit for traffic that would normally be coming in and out of those driveways when it was in operation. What we did is we used trip generation rates established by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We applied to determine what our potential new traffic impacts or new traffic generation may be for the proposed facility. We then applied those trips to our proposed site driveways. And as Casey mentioned, we're actually maintaining the existing driveways where the easternmost driveway is entrance only and the westernmost driveway is exit only. So we're maintaining those same traffic flow patterns as were there under the former activities. So then we apply our trips to the network. We provide background growth just to accommodate average growth through the area. And then we determine if our traffic is going to have any impact on the operating conditions through the area. And fortunately, the nearest signalized intersection, Livingston Street, does maintain acceptable levels of service. And just for the board's consideration, so our total new trips associated with our development would only be 65 new trips in the morning peak period and 56 new trips in the Saturday midday peak period. So we analyzed the, those periods that would potentially have the highest impact. So for this user would be the AM rush hour peak and then a Saturday midday peak period. So once we apply those trips to the network, we are able to maintain acceptable levels of service in the corridor. Our exiting movements, leaving our site driveway operate as you would expect most stop sign controlled minor approaches to operate in a major corridor such as this, which was expected. But overall, the site can accommodate, or the area can accommodate the new trips, the minimum new trips that are actually generated by the proposed facility. And then just another point from an analysis standpoint, we didn't take any credit for the existing trips, which are actually would have been coming in and out of that driveway when it was a bank. So our analysis definitely is conservative in terms of what the impact might be on the roadway network. We did receive some comments from the town engineer, which we can talk through, but we also received some comments from the planner. We were hoping to kind of run through a couple of those now, and we can show actually, before we dive into those, we can show the proposed elevation. I know Casey mentioned it, we just mentioned it as a coffee shop, but it is proposed to be a Starbucks to come in and replace this bank branch that was here. So our proposed elevations, you can see we're primarily maintaining the existing architecture. We're providing some additional signage in accordance with their standard signs package. And we also have a floor plan which just shows the interior layout. One of the things that we've done as part of this, which we're seeing with a lot of things that they're looking at now, is they've obviously made a number of changes to their operations in response to COVID. So this project and this proposal to renovate this existing bank branch kind of incorporates a lot of those things into the project. So the walk-up window is a new feature that they've been utilizing or proposing as part of the response to COVID. So that's actually built right into the patio area. So if you do an online order or a mobile order, you can go up and you can park and then walk up and pick up your coffee if you didn't want to go through the drive-through. But one of the other things that they've done is they actually dedicate some parking spaces so that if you go through the drive-through, they could actually direct you to a dedicated space to wait if you have a larger order that may hold up the processing of vehicles as they go through that drive-through. So it's so they've certainly learned a lot about efficiency through this as the prevalence of drive-throughs has obviously grown, and we've been able to incorporate a lot of that into our site design. Casey, you can go back to the site plan. So we did receive comments from the planner. One of which Kevin, I wanted to mention.
Kevin, can I just stop you right there just for a second?
Of course.
Just for a second. This is Bob Fowler. Is there anything significant from the town engineer or the planner that is going to cause you some problems that you can't take care of verbally, but you have to do something to bring you back?
Well, based on some of the comments, I kind of wanted to talk through them with the board.
That's fine.
Yeah, one, for example, we're looking to kind of minimize the overall disruption on the site as part of this re-tenanting of this existing facility.
Right.
So, for our exiting driveway, we have parking spaces along the left-hand side there, and those spaces exist. They've been in existence since, I think this building was built in 1984, 1985. So those have always been there. But now those spaces are within the required landscape buffer. So we would simply hope and we request from the board to kind of maintain that existing non-conforming situation that essentially grandfather those parking spaces be there, because we're trying to minimize that disruption. We're not trying to, eliminate some of those spaces that would require a larger redevelopment of the site. So that was one that we wanted to talk through with the board if they felt it was acceptable to maintain those in those current locations. I think that was the primary concern that I wanted to talk to regarding the planner's comments. For the engineer's comments, he did have some comments where he requested us to provide a sidewalk along the property frontage. As you can kind of see here, we have very minimal width between the existing right-of-way, our activities, and even the edge of Main Street. So we propose to not have to install that sidewalk. Right now, our application actually doesn't include any activity in the right-of-way, so we aren't required to go get a permit from the DEP. Putting in that sidewalk would trigger that requirement, and so we'd like to avoid that if the board felt that was acceptable. There are sidewalks up and down Main Street across the street from us, but there are none on our property, and that's consistent with the uses on either side as well. So it'd kind of be a really small section of sidewalk to nowhere. One of the other comments from the engineer, he had requested that we analyze the weekday midday peak period from a traffic standpoint. Rather than go out and do those counts, we just got these comments from Thursday, last Thursday. What we did do is we looked at some of the Mass DOT count stations, and there was one up by Pleasant Street, which actually shows that midday peak period, and it's roughly 20% more than what the AM peak period is. So when we actually grow those volumes to our site, they're actually consistent with that Saturday peak. So our Saturday analysis is actually probably consistent with what that midday peak would look like. And from an operation standpoint, we didn't see any impact that would require additional analysis for that. The other comment from the engineer was that he wanted to see if we felt that a left turn lane in Main Street was required for vehicles traveling eastbound or southbound. And what we found is there's actually there's over 20 feet of width from the double yellow to the curb line on that opposite side of the road. So there's more than enough width for that bypass lane, so that if someone is turning left into the site, they'd be able to, get up against that double yellow and still have room for vehicles to drive around them. So we didn't think the need for the left turn lane was warranted. And actually, even in our busiest peak, I think we're only expecting, let me just pull this up so I don't misspeak. We're only expecting about between 50 and 60 vehicles to be turning left, taking that movement. So that's less than, one vehicle a minute. So there's more than adequate capacity and gaps in traffic for those cars to take that left without really creating any kind of undue impact on the network. So, those were the only comments that I wanted to talk to the board about and see how they felt. I think everything else we can certainly address and comply with. There was also a comment about an external grease trap. In applications like this, the tenant actually typically puts an internal grease trap in. So we would just be working through that with the Board of Health. So I think other than that, I think it's a generally straightforward application. We're looking to renovate an existing building and bring a Starbucks into Tewksbury. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
All right. Very, very good. Thank you. Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin and Casey, great presentation. Really thorough, and thank you for doing that for us. It makes our job a little easier. One of the questions I had is regarding the online orders and pickup. So are they going to be able to park here and then just walk up to the window?
Yes. And one of the things we're actually doing is adding a sidewalk kind of along those spaces out front. and then, you know, a crosswalk up to that pickup window in that patio.
Okay. So access, if somebody was coming up Main Street and wanted to get into the site, is there a walkway here that between the parking lots to walk up? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, if you park in those spaces in the middle, in between
Okay.
the store and Main Street, we provided that there.
Okay.
And there's also sidewalks around the building if you're parking up along the building on the southern side of the site.
Okay. Where's my other question? Say, hold on. How many seats are you proposing internal?
We don't actually have that, but they're typically around 55 seats. You know, internal 45, external around 10, or 40 to 15. They
Okay.
usually go to the total 55 mark.
Okay. So I'm not quite sure if I remember the landscape design. Do you have enough landscape on the front of the property to really make it look appealing from the street?
We do. Yeah, that's one of the things we actually wanted to always make sure we take a look at is how we can really kind of beautify the site. So, you know, if you look at Street View now, there's really only one tree, the rest is lawn. So we've added a good amount of landscaping to kind of spruce up the entrance ways, and then even once you're inside the property as well.
Okay, to low enough that there wouldn't be any sightline restrictions, right?
Of course, yeah. We always look at, you know, for that exiting movements out of that northerly drive, we always make sure that there's no impact to the site distance.
Okay. So how many vehicles are there in the queue for we had earlier question about that, and you have a lot of vehicles. You said, is that 11? Is that the right number you gave us?
Correct. There's 11. There's 11 in
Okay.
that queue before you even get to the parking. Then obviously there's additional, you know, of capacity on site to prevent vehicles from going out onto Main Street.
Okay. So the 11 vehicles, is that from the ordering spot back, or is it from the window back?
From the pickup
What?
window back. I think the pickup window back.
Okay. Any idea how many vehicles you have from the ordering window to the actual pickup window?
7.
Okay. All right. Good.
We have seven queue from the pickup to the menu board, and then an additional 4 back from there.
I got you. Great. Yeah, I look forward to the plans going forward, and hopefully we can get your issues resolved with the town engineer and everything else, and we can get this open and running. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patalia. Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great presentation, very thorough. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Patalia answered most of my questions. I know there's been, in any of our developments, we're looking for sidewalks, understanding Tewksbury's in desperate need. And obviously with this Starbucks coming to town, I think it's going to be some excitement within the town. I know a lot of people have been asked me personally, how come we don't have a Starbucks? So here it is. But I think something can be worked out with the sidewalks. I know there's potential some repaving being done down the road. So I understand your concern about putting in sidewalks because that opens up issues with DEP. But I think something we could potentially work out if the parties are interested in looking at some sort of contribution towards a sidewalk that we could potentially use as matching funds down the road. But I think that's something can be worked out easy enough, and then that will fall back on the town project, which would solve some problems on your end. But I'm looking forward to it. I think this is a great addition to a parcel that's been sitting vacant for a little while. And once again, great presentation, and looking forward for the rest of the information coming in front of the board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think if we all listen real quietly, we can probably hear our assistant town manager holding his breath, waiting to see this project get approved. So I'm glad to see that there's a lot of space for the queue up. I think as any of us who've driven down to the next closest Starbucks, which is down in Wilmington, how it can get kind of a mess in terms of the backup because of the way it's sort of situated. So this seems like it's got a pretty substantial amount of space. Same as I said for the other ones, we're probably gonna have to find a line someplace though where we put, no queue beyond this point where it's gonna affect, people even being able to pull into those parking spaces. So somewhere that probably should find a spot where it'd be good to say, after this, we really don't want the cars queuing up any further, or they're going to block up all the parking spaces. I have no issue with granting whatever we need for leaving those spaces out there near the front. I mean, I don't know if you have any ideas in terms of employee parking or whatever, but it almost feels like those spaces might work nicely for the cars that aren't going to move much during the day, as the staff's there. But that's up to you guys, I guess. But I don't really have an issue with that. The only place where the lot can cross over, there's no crossover to that lot coming from the Livingston Street side, correct?
That's correct.
Get on.
Yeah, there's no.
Okay.
That's correct. There's no cross access from our parcel to the site to the south, and that was actually one of the comments from the engineer, because he made some statements that people would potentially use this as a cut through from Livingston to avoid that signal, but we have no connection through the abutting piece where the Tewksbury Sports Club is, so there's no way for vehicles to kind of get through there. So
okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. I read the same comment, and I wasn't really sure if it was just meant that people would cut through to try to get to it, but you're still going to have to go out onto 38.
Exactly. We were scratching our heads on that a little bit too. So,
Okay.
so I don't think that, we're not proposing any connection through there. There's no existing connection through there. So I don't really see that as anything, impacting.
The one thing I might say though, that you might want to consider, and I have no idea, but whether or not some sort of path or something that you might have that allows, because there's a significant number of people that potentially might want to come over there from, say, where the gym is, and come over and do one of those pickups at the window kind of thing or whatever, just as in terms of making it a little simpler. I don't know. That's up to you, I guess, but I would think that you might want to consider whether or not just a small little maybe paved cut through doesn't make sense. Just to make it convenient for people. Because otherwise, maybe you might want to grab a coffee, but you're already over by the gym. You might want to grab it, get back in the car, leave, and not have to go out into 38 just to do the loop through. Just, you know what I mean? But that's that's up to you to figure out, and you and your neighbor or whatever. But so otherwise, I'm all set with that. So the number of parking spaces. I know it seemed you guys were a little unsure on the number of seats in the interior / exterior. But the number of parking spaces you have are going to be sufficient for however many you put in. Is that it?
That's correct. There's 40 seats with 15 outside, generally. So there's more than adequate parking spaces based on code and operations as well. I think we're actually over parked based on code, but that's the right number for Starbucks.
Well, a little over is better than a little under, I suppose, because that doesn't ask us for a waiver. So. The only other one, I'll agree with Mr. Ryder on the sidewalk thing. I think in this case, it probably makes more sense to ask you to do, some sort of contribution to the sidewalk fund, because as I recall it, on that side of the street, we have a sidewalk that ends up by where O'Reilly Hardware is. And then there is nothing else again until maybe you get to Livingston. However, at some point, we may find that sidewalks come down Livingston, and then that whole piece that goes across in front of you, as well as all those others, may end up getting paved, at which point then we could probably deal with it. But just having you install a very small bit of sidewalk for the headache that you're going to get having to deal with, DOT, I don't see the need, because it's going to be a sidewalk that's an island unto itself and doesn't connect to anything. I don't really see what the point of that is right now. So if the other board members agree, I'm fine with that. All right, I think that covers it, at least for now.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
And those suggestions about the access to the gym next door, we actually have some gaps in our landscaping, which kind of make perfect walkways. I mean, we don't have any, relationships with the abutter, but we're certainly happy to. I think that's a great suggestion to kind of encourage some of that pedestrian activity. For sure, it's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Just to add to this is Bob Fowler. Just to add to the comments about the cut through, not a cut through, but a walk through. My concern is I'm all in favor of it, believe me, because you have a lot of commercial entity to the right side and a little bit to the left that would probably use your product. And I think for long in a great use. But I'm concerned with people walking down. If you look at the gym, you have the driveway right to the beside the gym and the commercial building out front. So I'm concerned about people walking across from Starbucks, let's call it, the coffee shop, to that back to there with their coffee, only to get to their office or to get to their car. They just got out of the gym, they want to grab a coffee. I'm not sure if the vegetation is going to be dense enough. So if you left one bush out with a walk through that they'd see it, or if you'd have to put some sort of fence there with an opening in the fence. That's up to you. But I'd like to make it so that they wouldn't be cutting through the entire area, but just in one dedicated spot. Is that possible?
Of course, we actually have a couple spots kind of built into our landscape plan,
Okay.
where I think that would be. It's almost, it's kind of built right in. You can see almost right in front, right there, and then over there as well. So we have a couple spots along that side.
So if you can define them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just because they just pointed out two spots, may I make a suggestion that one closest to the middle be the one you work with? Because I feel like that's going to give people the most sight line for cars coming into the gym or coming through that driveway that Mr. Fowler just pointed out that's next to the gym. Because if you move too far up towards the street, you're going to have cars potentially coming in off of 38 just too close to somebody deciding to walk back across the parking lot. I think the one further down in that middle area is probably the safest. Yeah, right there.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Nope, that's fine. You'll find that we always like to work off each other's thoughts, so it works out that way. So if we can take care of the pedestrian traffic with, so it is defined, a sidewalk there, and something on the ground, just so people will know that are driving that this is a walkway. And on the other side, this is why I agree with the other members that a sidewalk out front, I think, would be very advantageous, because on the left side, you have a use that there are people who are there all day, and I'm sure they would love to have your product, and they wouldn't be able to walk over because that's where the drive up is. But if they could walk out onto Main Street and get to go into your site, it would be an easy walk for them. And that's why I'd like to see all you could do to work with the town engineer on the sidewalk out front and come to some agreement that will be conducive to everybody's likes. Other than that, anything else from the board before I open it up?
All set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Brian, can we have, see if anybody's going to come online?
We have no callers at this moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll wait a little bit. Are there any variances that we might want to note right now to discuss?
Well, we had some waivers.
I'm sorry,
actually-
not variant. I'm sorry. Not variances, waivers. Right.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I just wanted just to touch on the comment about our butter to the left. I just want to point out, Casey, if you can go back to the aerial, we actually have there is a driveway connection between our property and the property to the north, and that's being maintained. And I think that if you look, there's actually their existing sidewalk from that property kind of comes right across, and they'd be able to continue to pass through there.
Okay.
And the vehicles leaving the drive-through, we actually have a stop bar there and a stop sign, so they know they'd have to look for pedestrians, and that's actually a pretty standard thing that we're seeing nowadays.
Yes, that's good. That's good.
Movement.
Yep.
So that's good. I think, we do have a number of waivers. We can run through those, but if we could just talk a little bit more about that sidewalk, I think, we'd certainly be interested in agreeing to a contribution if that's something that the board would see favorably. I think because, for us to kind of bring this forward and get this selling coffee as soon as possible, if we can avoid having to go to the DOT for an access permit, that could certainly expedite the schedule. And as the plan sits right now, without that sidewalk, we can avoid the DOT, and we actually don't have any DOT permitting, which can definitely expedite things. So if there's a way that we could agree to a contribution, we'd be happy to do that. I think we'd just probably be interested in understanding what that contribution might be.
Well, okay. We'll have to have some numbers though to get back to the town engineer. When you say DOT, what tips the DOT? Being out on the border? I mean, on the taking or what?
And so if you see along our frontage, you see that property line along the state road, that's the right of way.
Yes.
So if we're not doing any work in the right of way, we have no permit obligations with the DOT. And right now, all of our improvements are entirely within our property. So we don't have any access permitting requirements based on our current design with the DOT. Putting that sidewalk in would trigger that because some of that sidewalk would have to be in the state right of way. But if we could make a contribution to that sidewalk fund, and that was something that Tewksbury did in the future, then that'd be part of your permitting process. So we could avoid that need.
All right. Mr.
What is
Chairman?
it? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's when I spoke, and I believe Mr. Ryder, that was where I thought we both were. I just as soon see them do the donation because I feel like it's a sidewalk to no place.
Yeah,
Only because no one else over there has one right now. And if it turns out someday down the line the whole side gets done, okay. But right now, to have them trigger DOT and then really put in a very small bit of sidewalk in front of them that doesn't go anywhere, I just didn't see. I didn't see the need at this point. I'd just as soon see them do the donation to the sidewalk fund.
That's fine.
And Mr. Hardiman will do the calculation, and
Yes.
he'll figure out the calculation of the cost, and then he'll get that back to the planning board for the amount on the donation for that section of sidewalk.
Right. Very good. Thank you. Brian, anyone on the line?
No callers, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So right now we have just a limited amount of conversation to bring back. You have some waivers we have to post, right? And we have just the sidewalk discussion from Mr. Hardiman. Anything else? Anna, do you know of anything else we have?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question if I could bring it up.
Go right ahead.
Does the change of use require a Mass DOT permit as well?
Typically, no, I don't believe so. It's an existing bank use for the drive-through. We're still obviously getting that permit for the drive-through. We're maintaining that.
I think you may have to check into that if that's just before we, go any farther, just for your own benefits, just to make sure we're on the right page. So.
Okay.
All right. So how much time from today do you think you might need to come back? speaking,
You know, we actually had a draft response to comments addressing the planner's comments and the engineer's comments. We never like to drop that on a board the day of a meeting, but we do have all that information, so we can likely do that. We can likely do this relatively quickly.
okay.
When's the board next hearing?
2 weeks.
Yes, 2 weeks.
So it's March 22nd.
Oh, it's 3 weeks then.
Well,
Oh,
that's
2
2
weeks.
weeks. Yep.
2
just
weeks.
March
That's right.
22nd.
2 weeks. Today's the 8th. The one after this, Anna, is 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, so the one after this is going to be on April 12th.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 weeks. Does
We
that
would
fit with
definitely
you?
yeah, if we can work with Mr. Hardiman to fine tune that number for the sidewalk.
Okay.
I'm sure we can talk to other issues. I think the board's generally agreeable to maintain those existing nonconformings. So I think that should be fine.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, if I may have missed it in the packet, but if we don't have one single sheet that has all the waivers on it, could the petitioner please put that together and put it in with the next submission?
Yeah.
Just to make it easier when we go to do the waivers.
We will, and Ms. McGinty actually identified another one in her comments, so we can incorporate all that and provide one single sheet with those requested waivers.
Thank you.
Okay. We'd appreciate that. Thank you. I'm looking for my sheet for the next meeting.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I ask one other question for the
Go right
petitioner?
ahead.
So
Go
in
right
the list of the engineer's comments, the one that I remembered, I just thought of it just now, was the one about checking on the traffic 6 months down the line. You didn't bring it up, so I presume you don't have an issue with that?
We would be happy to do a post-opening study. I know that's something that you guys have done in the past, and he's requested in the past. You know, we don't have an issue with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anna, what's open for the next meeting?
So the next available time for March 22nd, the time slot is 7:15.
Is that all right with you, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, make a motion to continue this hearing till 7:15 on the 22nd of March.
Second.
That's good. On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Fratellia,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
chair votes aye. And gentlemen, I want to add what the other board members said. Your presentation was top notch. Very good.
Well, thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you much.
Well thought out,
Thank you.
well formed. Thank you. We'll see you on the
All right.
15th. I will see you at 7:15 on the 22nd. Very good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Have a good one.
Next item on the agenda is 920, 978 Livingston Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Jim Hanley with
Good evening.
Civil Design Consultants.
Make a
Mr.
motion to
Chairman,
waive the public
thank
reading.
you.
Oh, this is the,
Second.
this is our first meeting with this? Oh, that was
Yes.
the concept meeting before. Okay. I
Correct.
apologize. Yep. Motion to waive the reading public notice?
Yes.
Oh,
Second.
wait a second. On
Second.
the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Fratellia.
Aye.
Very good. Chair votes aye. You have the floor.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultants. I'm here with Ani Martel, who's the applicant, and Dick Kuko as well. So we were here in front of you, I think it was just a couple of weeks ago, to give you the conceptual plan kind of review. And if you'd like, I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk back through some of these comments here. Let's see. I'll make sure I get the right one. Okay. I trust you can see my screen specific to
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so tonight I'm just going to walk through existing conditions, the proposal, and where we stand in the review process. And again, this is a combination of two parcels. 920 Livingston Street is a 7.5 acre parcel that provides frontage to a single family residential, and then a large portion of undeveloped land toward the back. And then 978 is a 1.4 acre parcel, and that's where this house is right here, about approximately 40 feet of frontage up along Livingston Street. So again, just to kind of give you a lay of the land and how this works here. 920 is up by the road, 978 is here. There's an existing driveway. To kind of orient yourself, we're kind of kitty-cornered across from Blue Spruce Way. And there's an existing private, an existing driveway that provides access down to 978. Excuse me, this is where the 3 additional lots plus or minus will are proposed. So we take both lots 920 and 978. We have nearly 9 acres in area, about 2.5 acres plus or minus of wetland area. Obviously, this portion of town is zoned R40. It's surrounded by single-family houses to the west on this side, to the north on this side. Really undeveloped land in the a large power line easement to the south and the east. So what are we proposing to do? I think this probably, well, I'll show this one here. I think this one probably shows it the best. So we're referring for an OSRD special permit, a definitive subdivision, as well as a land disturbance permit. So we have 2 lots to begin with. We're going to have 5 lots at the end of the day. 920 Livingston Street will be broken off with 1 acre and 200 feet of frontage. So this 920 is not included as part of the OSRD subdivision. So we actually have 4 lots, which would be the new OSRD, one of which is the existing 978. So all said, we have 3 additional lots. The lot areas are all, for the 3 additional lots, are approximately 12 to 15,000 square feet. 4 bedroom, 2,800 square foot is kind of the proposal for these units. 450 feet of roadway coming in off of Livingston Street in a 40-foot right of way. We'd also be looking for 20 feet of pavement. And you might recall, we talked about the intersection a little bit. We'll actually be able to provide 24 feet of pavement at that location there. So the application that we filed a month ago or so included 3 waivers. And I'm just going to touch on all 3 of these and then kind of circle back based on the discussions we've had with the town since we initially submitted this. But waiver number 1 is specific to allow, let's see. One of the constraints we have on this property, if we go back and we look at the existing layout of the land, this 978 is providing us access. And this is what I call a pork chop lot. It has the 1.4 acres back here, but it only has 40 feet of width between the abutters on the east and the abutters on the west. So we only have 40 feet here. And so because of that, we're kind of challenged with how we can access out onto Livingston Street. So the original application is that we proposed a 24-foot wide intersection 50 feet from Livingston Street. On the downhill side of that, we have a 25-foot wide radius that complies with the subdivision regulations. But because of the 40-foot limitation that we have, we are only showing 10 feet here. That was on the original. I'm going to follow, kind of swing around back on that after I kind of give you an update as to where we are. So that would be waiver one. The second waiver is specific to the width of the right of way going from 50 to 40 feet, and then the pavement going from 24 to 20 feet. It's the applicant's intent to provide a private road here, not a public road. There's already an existing driveway down there. It already services 978. It would be completely removed, regraded, so that alignment-wise and grade-wise, it complies with the subdivision regulation. But based on the intensity and the fact that it's already serving one, feel a 20-foot wide private roadway provides sufficient access to the 3 additional lots. And then the third waiver would be specific to the roadway cross-section and specifically eliminating the green strip and then the sidewalk. And again, we're aware of a fee in lieu, and we understand that as well. So where do we stand? We made the formal submission on the 11th of February. Since that time, we've been working with fire and with DPW and with planning, specifically to review the intersection geometry. We met with you guys last week on the 8th. And then we had an IER, no, today's the 8th. So we met with you guys at your last meeting. Last week we had an IER, and we had further discussions with the town engineer, fire, and with planning. We will be also discussing further. I have another meeting set up with them on Wednesday to discuss this intersection design. So to kind of circle back with this intersection design, just so that you guys understand where it stands and what we are now proposing to do. We did have the initial discussions with DPW. Clearly, they weren't okay with the 10-foot radius. So what we are now proposing, and we still have to have further discussions with them, is Arnie's been able to secure an easement from both 1018 Livingston Street and 950 Livingston Street. Now, this easement would essentially replace the 25-foot radius at the property line right-of-way intersection that's required by your subdivision regulations. So where it stands right now, it looks like we'd be eliminating the radius specific to the 10-foot pavement radius and replacing it with a radius or a waiver specific to the radius on the property line. The idea with this is that it allows us to build this intersection consistent with your subdivision regulations. And what that does is it allows the pavement on both sides to have a radius that is 25 feet, which is what you guys require. We had our initial meeting with DPW last week. They had some comments. We were able to address those comments. We got some initial feedback from DPW that they still weren't comfortable with it. They didn't like it, and that's prompted a second meeting that we're going to have later this week. But I just kind of wanted to give you guys both alternatives that we have. We have one alternative with the 10-foot radius, and then we have the second alternative that we'd like to work further through with DPW and get your thoughts on the 25-foot easements that the abutting property owners are agreed to move forward. With that being said, the only other thing we have is conservation, which will be there on Wednesday night. We have not received a letter from DPW yet, and I think that's probably because some of this changed a little bit as we were going through the process. But that's kind of where we stand. That's the one over. Dick, I'm not sure if you have anything to add, but it's kind of the story.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Mr. Hanley.
I'm good now. Just want to make sure that we iterate that it's going to be a private road.
Thank you, Mr. Kuko. Board members, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was fine with this when we discussed it at the last meeting for the preliminary. Nothing's changed that's made me feel any different. So once all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted with DPW and or the engineer, whatever you got to do, I'll Otherwise, I'm pretty much all set. Just a little bit on that access way. I mean, what exactly? I try to explain a little bit better. What exactly is the issue at this point? If you're giving the 25, what is the remaining issue that's still bothering them?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I don't want to speak on behalf of DPW because I don't know.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, okay. So my understanding is that because this 25-foot radius would be held in an easement as opposed to actually owned or actually be part of the right of way, that there's some concern or consternation there. I'm not totally clear on it. We're a little confused on it on our end. Hopefully on Wednesday, we'll have a meeting in the minds to be able to work something out. But that's my understanding of it right now.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, our position on that is, if it's not going to be a town road, so the town having the fee to the road, they won't have the fee to this road, they won't have the fee to the easements, but they don't need it because it's not going to become a town road. So what we thought the goal was, we're trying to achieve is public safety and the Amazon trucks and the trash trucks and everybody else that has to get down there. So we now have the 25-foot radius, which works for, all the turning movements. So it's going to be a private road, whether it's easement or fee. We don't see, what the difference is. So if it was going to be a public road, maybe a different story.
Right. And then just remind me, this is something that's totally theirs to deal with, correct? This isn't something for us to weigh in on?
Well, yes. I mean, to me, I'm saying, even though we would technically be asking for that waiver because it's not, on our property, we're not sure if we need that, but I like to do belts and suspenders so we don't end up, getting ready to put the road in and then somebody goes, oh, wait a minute. So that might be something that we're asking you guys to weigh in on as a belt and suspenders exercise.
All right. Okay. I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Ryder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything further. I was in favor of this at the last meeting. I had the question about the same thing. You're meeting the 25-foot radius. I think it's really a fact of just an easement versus owned, but I think that they can work that out, and looking forward to this coming back in front of us. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo my colleagues' comments as well. I don't have any problems here. It looks like we have a solution to a problem that was presented earlier, and I think it looks good. It looks like it'll work, and I look forward to getting the issue resolved and moving forward with the project and get it approved. I think it's a nice project, and will bring nice lots to the area, and if we can get the fire department on board, I think we'll be all set. So with that, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I like the way, Mr. Hanley, that you tried to go around the problem. I could see, I said to myself, there's got to be more of a problem than the 25 feet. And what are they looking for? So when Mr. Johnson asked that, I said, great. So.
It's because he's got his Henry Kissinger hat on.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you, Mr. Hanley.
You're welcome.
If so, we do have some homework to do. You'll be coming back, but we want to open it up for the audience in case there is someone out there that wants to talk to us. Maybe Yanni wants to talk as an abutter.
Oh, no comments, sir.
Yeah, I know.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, we come up with a name today, so for the road. So we'll be submitting that to the public safety folks, and hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have an approved name for the road.
Oh, good. All right. Brian, anyone online?
We have no callers, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Do you want to wait 30 seconds? Well, let's discuss this. Mr. Hanley, what is 2 weeks' time sufficient for you on the 22nd?
Yeah. We're gonna meet with the DPW this week, fire this week, planning this week. We'll have direction. We can give you an update. So yes, 22nd
Okay.
would work.
Very good. Okay.
So, Mr.
And-
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue the hearing until the 22nd of March,
What,
Second.
we want to get a time.
7:20.
How did you get that?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, 7:20 would be the next time slot.
There you go. By the numbers. Thank you. All right. There's a motion on the floor, has been seconded. Yes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Battaglia,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. We will see you gentlemen on the 22nd.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with your good luck with your homework.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys. Girls.
Bill, Bob, Honey. All right, next item on the agenda is 913 East Street. Continued from, this is a continued public hearing. Site plan special permit. Mr. Hanley?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I had to close something down, and of course now I can't find it. Give me just 1 second here. I think I got it.
At least you're sharing your screen. The other stuff was like, God knows what.
All right. So, yes, 913 East Street, Jim Hanley with Civil Design Consultants. Dick Kuko is here as well, and Joe Cataldo is also on the line. One thing I'd like to do now is just kind of share this screen and kind of walk through what we're doing. All right. So I want to give you an update on what we've done last time around. Just big picture, 913 East Street. This is 7,000 plus or minus square foot commercial garage addition to an existing garage. It's a by right use, and we've kind of been working through the process here with the town for a few months. So last time we were in front of you was February 1st. We have made additional submissions and have been working with DPW to address their remaining technical concerns. So we made additional submissions on February 4th, March 3rd, and then we got a review letter back on Thursday of last week, which was the 4th. But there was only a couple of really minor comments technically, and I wanted to be able to kind of get back to you and at least say that we've addressed those, although I don't like kind of giving it to you last minute here, but that's what we did, is we wanted to try to get everything done, everything back in front of you. One item that is kind of driving how we're responding and trying to get this thing cleaned up is that we do have a variance that was issued last spring, and the clock is ticking on that. So we'd much prefer not to have to go back to them and ask for the same thing twice. So I'm really hoping that tonight we can kind of walk through some of these remaining issues and maybe get a decision. So we did get a response letter or a review letter on March 4th, and I think it makes sense, if you're good with it, Mr. Chairman, to just walk through some of these comments and revisit these and possibly make a final determination.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
I think, I'm not sure if everybody's screen is frozen, but mine is.
Mine is not.
Mine's moving.
No, mine's frozen. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so there really isn't too much here, technically speaking, but most of the things that I wanted to kind of discuss with you are things that the DPW has asked for, but they're not specific requirements. Comment number one, you might recall we talked about it at the first meeting in February. It was about requesting the abutter, which is the MBTA, to provide us with a sign off for a pond that already discharges onto their property. I wrote an email to DPW. I specifically asked, is this a requirement or is this something that you would like to see? So I got an email back on 2/16 that essentially said DPW does not have jurisdiction, okay? On the March 4th letter, DPW has written that they recommend. So that's one item I'd like. Obviously, we don't want to ask for permission from something we don't need to. It's the case that they say no, and then we're kind of in a pickle here. So that's one item I'd like to discuss with the board further. Number two was just a technical comment. We've made the change to the plan, and that's up on my screen right now. Comment number three is specific to the sidewalks. We had some discussion really dating back from our initial meeting. And what we've agreed to do is put sidewalk in. And you can see that along all of East Street, going from the far east northeast side to the far south west side. What we would like consideration for is this one section right here. We'd like consideration to pay the fee in lieu for this one section, which is roughly 100 feet. The reason for that is that we have utility poles, we have a detention basin that's already there. We will have to put curbing in at that location because we can't push the sidewalk back where the entire other portion we can. We can push the sidewalk back to the right-of-way line, provide a green strip, as well as the shoulder extension that one of the members suggested previously. So that's the second item that I'd really like to kind of get input from the board. The fourth item is just a technical item, so we've agreed to that. The fifth is the applicant shall be responsible for future maintenance of any retaining walls. Of course, we will. 6 is applicant shall provide all necessary easements should the curbing and sidewalk not be installed within the right of way. Of course, we'll do that. And then 7 and 8 are two items that I'd like to talk to you. We have a system, an infiltration system located in this corner of the building that's sized specifically to handle the increased impervious surface, which is only plus or minus 1,000 square feet. The town engineer has asked for additional information relative to the roof line and how that roof will actually drain. Typically, the process here is that we're not doing full architectural construction drawings until we get your approval, then we do them and we submit them with the building permit. So we don't have any problem providing it, but we think it's a reasonable consideration to allow that as a condition of approval prior to construction or prior to the building permit. So we don't have any problem with it. We just like to get your thoughts on potentially conditioning it. The last one I wanted your thoughts on here is that you might recall that we talked a little bit about the existing use of the existing garage. There's actually a company in there that cuts granite for granite countertops and other granite things. So there was some debris litter. It was the paint-like substance that DPW noted in a previous review letter. I talked to Mr. Cataldo. He explained to me that it's really the spoils that they generate from when they cut the granite with the wet saw. It's run out of the building on occasion, and then it just kind of piles up there. So obviously we're going to clean this up. We've got no problem cleaning it up. We'll put a plan into place so that it doesn't happen again moving forward, but we'd like consideration for that to be a condition of approval as well. So with that being said, those are the four things. It's the paint-like substance. It's the roof plan. It is the fee in lieu for 100-foot portion, and then it was the request that we provide or sign off from the MBTA that we prefer not to have to do since it's a preference as opposed to a requirement. And Dick, I'm not sure if you got anything, but
I mean,
that's it for me.
the thing with the MBTA, they've been notified 3 times by certified mail.
Right.
Did it at the time when we filed for the zoning board variance, we did it for the planning board, and we did it again for conservation. You know, that's probably a 4-year process if we get permission from them for something like that. So, and then the other, basically what you're seeing over there on that side is just slurry, which once it dries, it can be swept up very, very easily. It's not hazardous material. So for now.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Kuko.
one final thing, there's been, you know, a lot of delays on this, you know, not anybody's fault, just, you know, just because of COVID and because of scheduling with reviews. The variance was issued on May 28th, so we have to pull a building permit by May 28th. So hopefully we can get this thing wrapped up so that we can get through the 20-day appeal period and then file for the building permit with plenty of time without having to have the building commissioner do yeoman work to look at the permit. So we'd appreciate that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuko. So you actually have almost 2 months?
Yeah, well, you take a month out for getting the permit and the 20-day appeal period, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I was gone for a while. I lost my audio and then the frozen screen. I'm not sure if Mr. Hanley did. Are you all set with that pole and the sidewalk?
Yeah, so one of the comments was to make sure that we have ADA clearance.
Yeah.
So we've added a note specific to that, just directing the contractor to make sure we have 36 inches clear.
Okay, I read that. I just didn't know if anything else changed. Very good. Thank you. Okay, who, are we all set from your end, Mr. Hanley?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Ryder.
Just a second, Mr. Chairman. Jim, is that the area where we were asking for the waiver? He might not have heard that.
Oh, yes, yes. So if you didn't, if you didn't hear this, Mr. Chairman, this one portion of sidewalk here, we'd be looking for the waiver in potentially a fee in lieu. And that's only because of the construction constraints that we have between the pole, between the existing pond, having to put in granite curbing.
Okay.
It's an option we'd like to have if possible.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you. Okay. What's the waiver going to be for? The width?
The sidewalks.
Just the width?
Because we would request this to be a fee in lieu, just this last 100-foot section.
So build all the sidewalk except that 100 feet and give you money for the 100 feet.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. Very good. Go ahead, Mr. Ryder.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. You know, as in the last project, a bit of concern that we install a section of sidewalk and no way to get to it. It's a bit concerning there. I understand there's some constraints, but it can be done. You know, there's means to make that sidewalk work. I understand it's not your preference, but you know, as Mr. Hardiman said, you know, putting this back on the town when additional sidewalks are done, this is going to become an expense on the town. You know, this really should be, this is part of the development. It should be done as part of the project. Understanding it's not an easy thing to do, but Jim, I'm sure you can design it to make it work. I just don't see, you know, having sidewalks in front of the parcel and missing 100 feet. The intent is, as these projects move along, we have sidewalks to connect along the roadway. So I would like to see that something that try and work that in so you can make that section work. And then, you know, there were a couple other simple items that Mr. Hardiman brought up. One thing I will tell you, I'm very familiar with, you know, that type of granite residue. that's something you do not want to let into your infiltration system.
Right.
It is, once it's in there, it's like cement to get out, and it wreaks havoc on the system. So that's something that should be maintained internally. So that's something should be addressed as well. I think the revising the plan for the oil separator, that's pretty straightforward. And then I do have to agree with you. I mean, as far as the railroad has been notified on 3 times now, based upon the abutters list. So if you look at the drawings, I don't see you're increasing any impact out of that pond onto the property. So no. So I think only if that was going to increase anything to their property, I think that would something that would I would recommend, but I don't think that that's a necessity. That's all I have right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder, for that. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm kind of on board with Mr. Ryder for this. I'm okay with the ones, the thing with the railroad. I mean, at this point, if there's any issue down the road, it's going to be between the parties. And obviously the petitioner understands that becomes a them problem at that point. It's not really on us. And I'm in agreement on the other 3 issues. I'm just trying to, is the waiver list that we have, is that accurate? Is that it? What I have here from, I don't know, I'm not sure. This is the one that the one with the town planners commenting on. I can't find any other list in my papers here. But just run through for me the waivers, other than the sidewalk one that we just brought up. What else are we looking for? So when it comes up, we can list them correctly.
You're going to have to give me 1 second to try to find that. And I'm doing that.
All right. So sometime between now and when everybody else is done, if you could just run through that to make sure we've got them all. Otherwise, I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the plans today, and I wasn't sure how the issue was going to be regarding the sidewalk that Mr. Hanley was looking for a waiver of. So I had an idea, and I ran it by Mr. Hardiman, and I sent a copy to Anna at well today as far as the sidewalks. So my question was, I know we need sidewalks in that on that area, but what about the idea of possibly utilizing the other side of the street? And I mentioned this to my board members as well, as far as sidewalks. And Mr. Hardiman mentioned about an issue with the corner of Carter Street and East Street. And I didn't know if we could take a fee in lieu of sidewalks on this side of the street and put them on the other side of the street. And for that reason, I think of the residents that are on the other side of the street that could probably use the sidewalk a little more than what will be on this side of the street. If we can't go all the way to the corner of Carter Street for constraints regarding handicap access and the intersection, then we do something else going towards 93 on the other side of the street for the residents who probably would use that more than the people who are going to be in and out of this commercial development here. And also, don't forget, there's another development coming up the street a little ways where American Gutter is coming into, I believe, 975 East Street. And coordinate that sidewalk issue with trying to do a entire sidewalk on the other side of East Street as far as we possibly could. So I don't know if that's amiable or acceptable or in discussion with my other board members, but I just don't think, I don't see many people using the sidewalk in front of 913 East Street, other than the fact that we have to put it in. So if we can, benefit some residents on the other side of the street, and I think of parents walking their kids on East Street, it's hot enough as it is. A sidewalk on that side may be beneficial but would have to earmark that money for that particular side of the street. I don't want to see it put into the general fund. And I don't know if that helps you, Mr. Hanley, in your plans going forward, but you know, I don't know if that's something we could even entertain, but just a discussion I had, and I had discussed it with Mr. Hardeman today, and I mentioned that I copied Anna on the email as well. So I don't know, maybe you can give me some comments, board members as well. What do you think?
Mr. Chair, if I.
Go right ahead.
Yep, thank you, Vinny. That's actually a good idea. The downfall with that is construction costs for a contractor are probably a third of the cost for a municipality to do it. We're paying if a municipality has to do it, you're paying prevailing wage, which is going to increase that price. That section's probably going to cost $175,000 across the street if that had to go out to bid. The limitations in Massachusetts make it very expensive for a small sidewalk project like that, just with prevailing wage, material rates, where a private contractor can do it significantly cheaper.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
It would be my only concern, something like that. But, I'm always willing to, looking at options, but I think that's cost, and then, presenting a cost to a applicant to say that we'd like the cost that it's, for the town to actually put this out to bid is going to be a showstopper for them, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to go off of Mr. Ryder's comment, but the one thing that I would say, and this is sort of the between Mr. Frataia and Mr. Ryder's comments, is that that's true, and we've known that any time we've taken a fee in lieu anywhere, is that obviously the cost of the petitioner putting it in is a lot less than the cost when we do it. But the trade-off here, I think, from what Mr. Frataia said, it gets us closer to having the amount necessary to do side work where we think it actually will work, as opposed to having the petitioner put in a sidewalk to no place. I mean, I guess that's really the weighing. I mean, I know we won't get $1 for dollar, but do we want $1 for dollar? I mean, I know we want $1, but what I mean is the dollars we're getting more beneficial on the other side than saying, never mind, we don't want the money, build a sidewalk that, as Mr. Frataia pointed out, may never get used. So I'm not saying I come down on one side of I'm just saying that's the real weighing. I know we're not going to get $1 for dollar, but to me, I feel like having a sidewalk where we think people are going to use it, where it's going to protect the most people, where it's going to benefit the most people, even if it still means we have to come up with, something to kick into it to get it done. But I would agree with Mr. Frataia that if we do this one, this should be dedicated to that area, and then the rest of it comes, from wherever it comes from. But that would get us a sidewalk where we actually might want it, as opposed to a sidewalk that just has to be put in. But again, we haven't heard from the petitioner, so I don't know where they feel on this anyway. So, but that's just my thought. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's a good idea. One way or the other, if you look at the north side of the road, it's all commercial on the south side and industrial, and all residential on the north side. So you'd have a sidewalk that would get you up. I think if you extend our frontage out, or if you take the amount of sidewalk that we would be putting in, it would get you to and across that intersection, because you wouldn't be putting sidewalks on the intersection.
Right.
Then you go a short distance up, and now you hit Katie Estates, and there's a sidewalk on Katie Estates all the way to the almost to the town line, or at least down to Kerry Plaza.
Yep.
And then if you start going westbound on East Street, although there's no sidewalk, once you get past the railroad track, there's a very, very, very wide shoulder between a few houses that are there, Bella Woods, and as you get down to the state hospital property. So a sidewalk on the north side of the road makes a lot more sense. I mean, to our client, it's dollars, whether he puts it on the side or gives you the money to put it on the other side. So it's, it's no difference to us, other than I hate to see a sidewalk sitting in front of here. Then you got McDivitt Mac where there won't be a sidewalk. Then you got 1029 East Street where there'll be a sidewalk. Then you got another 2,000 feet where there'll be no sidewalk. So at least this gets us closer to getting up to the sidewalk in front of Katie Estates.
Mr. Cuco, that sounds like a plan. Let's draw it up.
Well, I mean, I'm just going off of Mr. Fatalia's cue here.
No, I understand. It makes all the sense in the world. Mr. Johnson, are you all set?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to ad lib some more on this. My feelings are the money necessary for this obviously isn't going to be as much as we're going to have need on the other side. But when you talk about what can be done on the other side, it makes it sounds more palatable. So I will just say that I'm in favor of that and leave it at that. Brian, is there anybody online for this project?
We have no callers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can we hear from Mr. Hanley on some of his comments? What do you think, Mr. Hanley?
Specific to the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think we're open to that altogether. I hadn't heard about that, Mr. Patalia. Was Mr. Hardeman open to your suggestion?
Well, one of his concerns was the fact of I think it was the intersection. I don't have the email in front of me, but it was the intersection of Carter Street, I think, and then having to redesign the intersection there. But I'm thinking of leaving the intersection alone and just going north towards Katy Estates more and doing what we can.
Right.
We won't get the whole sidewalk area completed, I'm sure, but the road to least resistance and least issues would be my concern more than anything, and the benefit to the residents was my main concern.
So are you simply suggesting a fee in lieu, or are you suggesting that instead of building here, we would build over there?
Oh, that'd be great.
That runs into a whole.
I'll take that, Vinny. Sign him up.
I think that.
No, I guess fee in lieu of, I think, Mr. Hanley, because I don't think you'd be allowed to get over there unless something was resolved with the town. But
you run into
whatever works, I guess that's my bottom line. So, but I'd like to see it dedicated for that particular location. If we're not going to put it on 913 East Street, then I'd like to see it used on the other side of East Street to the residents that are going to be, benefiting from that, rather than just going into the general fund.
Right.
Well,
that'd be a condition. So.
Yeah, Mr. Fowler, unless I'm mistaken, don't you guys control that money? Doesn't just go into the, don't they?
Yes.
So the money that goes into the sidewalk fund, as my understanding is controlled by the planning board. So, you guys could be able to make sure that it's earmarked for that project.
Well, it might not. I think it's two reasons. It's not like, okay, we've got $20,000 here for this, but somewhere down the road, it should be noted that money was for that part of that East Street, and only so that it doesn't get swapped over to another site.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, it is controlled by us, but us might not be here then.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have it written down.
Yeah, well, if I'm hearing Mr. Fatalia correctly, he's talking about maybe making the same suggestion for 1023, 1029 East Street. Both of these properties have an extraordinary amount of frontage, so it's still going to be a good chunk of change. Most of the projects that come in have 150 feet of frontage or 200 feet of frontage. We have, between these two properties, we might have 1,000 feet of frontage, right, Jim?
So, Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
That was actually, I was going to make a suggestion that if I read this correct, that if we made that the funds received from this donation limited to be used within 1,000 feet east and west on the north side from Carter Street on the north side of East Street. So
Correct.
that way, you basically 1,000 feet either direction, and it's the center of that is Carter Street. So you can go a little bit either way, but you know that's the limit of where this money could be spent. So that way, it can stay in that area that Mr. Battaglia is pointing out, using that intersection as the center point.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So, Mr. Johnson, I would say Carter Street would be the end of the project.
Right.
You know, and on the left side as the end, and then it goes the other direction 1,000 feet.
Correct.
That would cover more of because the Carter Street intersection is the problem, I believe, according to Mr. Hardeman.
Right,
So,
but what I'm saying,
Yeah, look-
you say that it can
Look
go
at
on-
all the handicap ramps you'd have to put in.
well,
all I'm saying is that the limit being that you could go either way 1,000 feet with Carter Street as the center mark. So you
Okay.
could go 1,000 feet towards Katy, or you go 1,000 feet towards Bella, or you can do 500, 500. It doesn't matter to me. All I'm saying is as a geographical place to limit the money, using Carter Street as the center point and about 1,000 feet out either way keeps you in that section.
okay.
That makes sense?
That's fine.
Okay.
Very good. Mr. Hanley,
Yes.
what do you think?
Well, I think we've asked you to consider an alternative. You guys have given us an alternative, and if that's something that you'd consider allowing us to do, I think that's the idea here, right? So, I think we'd be if you'd allow us to do the fee in lieu and not do it right in front, I think that's something that the applicant would be agreeable to.
Okay, that's good.
Mr. Hammond, should we run this by the DPW as well? I mean, they're also going to be.
Well, Mr. Hanley's going to be talking to Mr.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Well, so I guess the question would be, what if we have a sidewalk on a plan that's about 600 feet in length, and the alternative would be that you could condition it that a fee in lieu would be acceptable in place of the sidewalk that we have on the plan, right? And then we can figure out what DPW wanted, and ultimately, at the end of the day, if we built the sidewalk, we'd satisfy the requirement. And if not, then you could take the funds and do as you wish. Is that reasonable?
That's fine. All right.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
you're
that would alleviate your waiver request too, Mr. Hanley, on the 100 feet that you're looking for.
Right.
And just and do fee in lieu for the entire sidewalk and not need a waiver for that 100-foot section, and not do it there because of the other constraints you have there with the telephone pole and the pond and everything else. So.
Right.
Good. Excellent.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think I've delayed and spoken long enough for Mr. Hanley to find his waivers, so he can tell us what they are now.
So the only waiver, after all of that, the only waiver is the sidewalk that we were asking for. So section
terrific.
5422.
Terrific. So that.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Miss Anna, I'm sorry.
if I may, so then what I need from the applicant, and this is all applicants, is when they change the waivers, they need to resubmit a waiver request form, and that's also for the record, just so we have that on file.
Yep.
So it's clearly stated what that waiver was changed to, etc. So that's where my comment was, and my comment.
Okay, but even if there are no waivers.
Right, but now we don't
If
have
they-
the waiver, right?
So they only need to submit a waiver request letter if there is a waiver request. And in some instances where other applications where they've removed a waiver, then you still need to resubmit it so that people are, for the record, know that that was changed, that they removed a waiver. So I just want to clarify that. So,
But just to clarify for me, the waiver is required if we don't pay the fee in lieu. If we pay the fee in lieu, then the waiver is not required. Is that correct?
Right.
so if you want to do the fee in lieu, you still need to submit a waiver requesting that, just to clarify it. And, with all this, we need to have, I will need to review it, what's submitted, and then, you know, we'll draft up that waiver. What we've done for other hearings is I'll draft the final conditions, draft the waiver, and submit that to the planning board so they can review that for when
Mr.
they're
Chair-
ready to close it, the hearing.
I got an easier solution, Mr. Chairman. Just deny the waiver. And then put a condition in that we have to pay the fee in lieu of our build a sidewalk.
Right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As I understood the way we left that, and if I'm wrong, I'd like the other members to correct me, but as I understood it, I felt like where we ended up was it's either build all of the sidewalk or do the fee in lieu of across the street with those limitations. I don't, and I'm not sure, but just from listening to what was said, I don't know that they have the votes to get the waiver anyway, so I'm not sure it's worth us even going down. I don't think we're going to discuss, I don't think we're going to be able to do that anyway, so I think it's really coming down to build all of the sidewalk or do the fee in lieu across the street. Those are the only two things. So when we're done with this, we're not going to have any waivers at all.
Are you happy with that, Anna?
So once again, if there's sidewalks are not being built, then a waiver needs to be requested. Okay, so that's pretty clear. And just in that letter state what is being requested.
Okay.
All right, Jim can take care of that because you're not drafting the special permit tonight anyway.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
But we
Okay.
do have it on the plan, right? So we have the sidewalks on the plan, and the alternative would be the fee in lieu, right?
Yes.
So I think the plan work is done, and then we can just coordinate and make sure that everything is all set with Anna before we come back.
I think I just realized, I understand what Anna's saying. It just occurred to me. I think what she's saying, if I understand it correctly, is that if you do the fee in lieu of, we have to waive the sidewalks.
Correct.
We do have a waiver. It's just we're not giving you the 100 feet. We'd be giving you the whole thing as a waiver if you do the fee. If you don't, so that's the condition of the waiver. I understand it now. I apologize, Anna. I was a little dense there. So I get it.
That's okay, Mr. Johnson. I just want to be consistent with everyone. Yeah. So, and you know, obviously if the sidewalks are being removed, then obviously the site plans need to be revised. So, we just need to finalize everything.
Okay.
Okay.
We usually
Very
don't. I mean, say you vote on the waiver, you can't remove the sidewalk from the plan. We could probably do it on the final MyLars
Right.
that you guys are signing.
No, so Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I need the applicant to submit their final plan, so the board is approving the final plan. So, for example, the sidewalks are being removed, that needs to be on.
All right, so the board needs to vote tonight, then the board needs to vote tonight to waive the sidewalk in lieu of fee in lieu of,
Right.
so we can change the plan.
Yep. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I think I'd like to, since we're not going to get this closed tonight, I think I'd like to be able to talk to the applicant, make sure we're on the same page. There's kind of been a lot of stuff kind of going around here, and I want to make sure everybody's on the same page before we throw a vote in here.
Okay.
We're going to reopen it.
All right.
So,
Okay, if that's the case, then we can continue this till 7:25 on the 22nd of March.
So moved, Mr.
Motion?
Chairman.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Ryder?
Aye.
Mr. Fattalia?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, everybody.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
All right, why don't we clear the board? Next item on the agenda is 935 Main Street, MDR. Hello, Mr. Street
Mr. Chairman.
and Mr. Mike.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Hello to the board.
Hello.
How are you?
Well, thank you.
For the
Nice
board,
looking horns.
I'm sorry.
Come on, cut me a little slack, Dick.
I want to start this meeting by saying I received a notification from the housing through Ms. Maniscalco, and she was very pleased with the meeting and the things that you have done for the Tewksbury Housing Authority, Mike. So from their viewpoint, they're 100% in favor of this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And I spoke to Melissa this afternoon, and she informed me that she was very happy with the changes that we had made in favor of the Housing Authority. She understands them completely, but she also cautioned me that she's got to bring them before her board, which
Yes,
she
on
was
the 15th.
confident. She was confident she will get their approval, but she does still have that one step to bring it before her board.
Okay, very good. Thank you. You know, that's a very bad location you have where your head is.
I know Dick made fun of me earlier, but yeah, I had to relocate tonight, so it looks like I have horns. It's not. It's a statue head on the wall.
That's fine. All right. Thank you, Mike. Okay. Next item on the agenda is this 9:35. Any questions? No. Andy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, Andy Street, Civil Design Consultants. If it's all right, I'm just going to share my screen. What's going on? That visible?
Yes, I can see it, Andy.
Okay. All right. So just as a brief refresher, this is the project at 935 Main Street. The applicant, Mr. Saccone, has dealt with the town on RFP process. This is the site of the former police station, and that's how he came about to this piece and put this project before the board here. So it's about a 6.5 acre parcel. Frontage is on Main Street, and the Tewksbury Housing Authority is behind the parcel opposite Main Street there. The development itself has remained largely the same since we showed up conceptually. We've got 9 buildings, 18 total units. 8 of these buildings are duplexes. And then the building in the front left corner of the plan is a 3-story building with a commercial space on the first floor and then 2 residential units above that. So we were last here, I believe it was February 22nd, a few weeks ago, and had brought a plan. Really, the discussion, as I'm sure the board remembers, but a lot of the discussion centered around these 20 parking spaces that we're showing at the rear of the parcel that are provided for the housing authority use, as was specified in that RFP I just mentioned. So there's 20 spaces back there. So there's been a lot of discussion about the location of those spaces, the screening of those spaces, access to those spaces. And last time we were here, we showed these spaces. There was a 4-foot buffer between the shared property line with the housing authority and 935 Main. And then there was a landscape buffer on the 935 property just behind those parking spaces in that 4 feet. And those spaces were connected to the housing authority walkways with a short walkway extending from the housing authority spaces on 935's property onto the housing authority's property itself. So the package, and this package was submitted Friday, so just early Friday morning. We submitted a complete set of revised plans, documents, all that. But at least for now, the thought is to focus on these housing authority spaces here again. So based on all the discussions that have happened since that meeting on the 22nd, including some correspondence, as Mr. Fowler, the chairman just said, with the housing authority itself, we've come up with this layout where we now have a 10-foot buffer between the housing authority parking spaces and the property line. That puts the nearest parking space, I think it's a little over 20 feet from the housing authority building. These spaces, we've got 2 handicap parking spaces. Those arborvitaes were relocated to the housing authority property. As part of the RFP, it discusses the buffer being placed on housing authority property, and so the buffer is there now, but the applicant is going to both purchase and install and guarantee those plantings for 3 years. So They will be on Housing Authority property, but the applicants, part of this project, will be putting them in. That walkway that was there before exists now as well. It'll connect right through about the center of these parking spaces, right to a walkway, that exists today on the Housing Authority property. There's now a sidewalk that will extend. We show a crosswalk, kind of a safe crossing from the walkway. You can follow this crosswalk to a new concrete sidewalk that will extend the length of the left-hand side of the driveway and connect all the way down to Main Street and the new sidewalks that were proposed originally that go with the development along the front of the parcel here. So access is provided really all the way through the site to get to Main Street or to get from Main Street up to the Housing Authority property. We have also the other big change or big difference is the applicant, Mr. Ciccone, is now offering 3 affordable units. Prior to this, the discussion was about 2, but 3 of these units will now be affordable, which I know we talked about was the other big discussion piece, kind of beyond these Housing Authority spaces. So I think in general, the layout is largely the same. We've reworked the parking spaces to come up with a new configuration. And this kind of came up in passing, but by reworking the parking, we were able to move them further away from Main Street. I know that's something we've discussed on past projects, but we've now increased the distance from Main Street to the first row of parking here. We're providing 2 parking spaces per unit. So for the duplexes, the requirement in the parking table is 3 per unit. For this mixed-use building, I presume it's only 2 per unit because it's not a 2-family residence. It's a mixed-use building. So it's a waiver from these 8 buildings that require 3 per unit, and we're providing 2 per unit, which is really consistent with a multifamily building. So if these were triplexes, for example, they would only need 2 per unit, but because they're duplexes, they fall in that 2 per unit category. So, you know, there's been a number of other changes with this submission regarding stormwater and utilities and things like that. Really just wanted to focus again for now, and we're happy to answer questions about anything, but really wanted to focus on the Housing Authority spaces. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything, but focus on those spaces, the access and where they're located, how they're shielded, and all that. So I think with that, I'll turn it back to the board, and certainly happy to answer any questions they might have, or Mike, if you want to add anything, of course, feel free.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Right ahead.
Yeah, we've really come to our senses, and Andy has managed to squeak out the 10-foot buffer. We have offered to do the planting that the Housing Authority was on the hook for monetarily, and guarantee it for 3 years. That's how I got the nod from Melissa. She's very happy. She's gonna give me permission to go on her property. We're gonna build a new sidewalk from the parking area to the existing sidewalk on the THA property at our expense as well. And I told Melissa that, you know, the only thing we won't be able to do is shovel snow on her portion of the sidewalk. And she said that they have a crew for that and that it'd be no problem for her to handle it. She was very happy that she wasn't going to have to find the money in her budget to do the planting that was required by the RFP. So we've gotten the buffer, we've gotten the spacing required, and that was the 10-foot was also a comment from the building inspector. So I believe that we've really complied now with everyone's comments. You know, Anna wanted the 3 affordables. I think the board wanted the 3 affordables. We're putting 3 affordables on the table, and they are going to be, Melissa and I spoke about the Tewksbury Housing Authority managing them. There'll be a fee that I will have to pay every year, but she'll manage them, and she'll vet the clients, and she'll make sure that the lotteries are done correctly and that all of that is done. That's her normal course of business. And I was really kind of excited, even though it's going to be a small fee, it's not something that we would have to handle on our end. We've added the sidewalk completely from the back of the property out to Main Street. And we've also, you know, I've always had the sidewalks on Main Street as part of our plan. And even though they go to nowhere right now, I'm hopeful that in the future, as that town center develops and as more of Route 38 Main Street gets reconstructed, that there will be sidewalks to connect to that. We threw four additional parking spaces in the back they're going to be designated visitor spaces. We've accommodated all the signage that we could possibly put in there. This development, the applicant, me, will be responsible for the plowing and the clearing. I spoke at length about that with Melissa today. We have a handle on how to do that. It can't all be done at once. It's several visits throughout the course of a storm and after a storm, because she herself has trouble coordinating with the housing authority residents as to, they all want to move their car at once, and it really doesn't work that way. So we've had extensive discussions on how that will work. The bottom line is that I know that I'm responsible for clearing the snow on our side, including the Tewksbury Housing Authority parking spaces, and we have a very good way to do it. The way that Andy finagled these buildings, we managed to leave the sewer easement intact. We're going to relocate that sewer, and the bonus for the town is that the sewer that exists there now is not working properly. The DPW is out there several times a year, because I don't know if the pipe is settled or if there's something wrong with the pipe, but we're going to replace that. And the DPW won't be out there several times a year clearing it. And I think that at the end of the day, I'm disappointed that Board Member Delaney isn't here tonight, because he was not happy with the proposal the way it was submitted prior. And I believe that he would be very happy with the accommodations we've made for the Tewksbury Housing Authority and the seniors, and to get the traffic out to the main street via sidewalk safely. I think what it boils down to, and please, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing that we're asking for a waiver on the entire project now is the 2 spaces per unit as opposed to 3. Is that correct, Andy?
That is correct, yeah, for the
So there's
duplexes, yes.
one waiver on and that's for 2 spaces as opposed to 3. And other than that, we're going to be in compliance.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Andy, anything else?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman, but
No.
certainly
Very
happy to
good.
answer questions.
Good job. Okay, board members, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Andy, Mr. Sarconi. This project has done a 180. I think it looks great. I'm happy that you were able to work with Melissa and the Housing Authority to come to an agreement about that vegetative buffer, as well as giving that 10-foot space. I think that it's a better project due to that, along with the sidewalk, as well as the sidewalk all the way out to the center of town for the residents of the Housing Authority to come out and get to Main Street. And as you stated, eventually that will hopefully connect to town center and bus stops or whatever is necessary. I do like the fact that you were able to put 4 additional spots in the back section for some overflow from visitors. I think that's just going to be something that's going to need to be managed. Signage is going to be critical there. Now, as part of that is, I notice you have those marked. Andy, do you intend on having those marked on the pavement, or is that going to be specific signage in those 4 spots? Maybe signs between these arrows, Housing Authority parking only. What's your intent on that?
Yeah, I think, so right now we have Housing Authority signs on either side, with the arrows pointing towards the middle.
Okay.
And I think it's probably signage for the visitor ones. That's probably the clearest way. I mean, especially when it gets snowy and
Sure. No, absolutely. I think that's the best way. And I think, once the occupants are in those dwellings, I think they'll all know as part of just informational that those are overflow parking. Not only just for the duplex, but also potentially for the commercial component.
That's correct. Board Member Ryder, I also don't have a problem if those spaces were used by visitors to the Tewksbury Housing Authority.
Okay.
As long as they're all kept clean, they're all well marked. If Tewksbury Housing Authority had a visitor and their spaces were full, by all means, they'll have access to those visitor spaces as well.
Okay. As far as one other concern, I know the snow storage, but I think that's ample. Also, you've given yourself enough in the potential along that 10-foot buffer in that area. And lastly, Andy, is any of the lighting changing? Is that still staying the same package that was submitted?
Well, so we've submitted, I guess it's kind of product information on the lighting. The intent's to keep that the same. I think, the parking in the back reconfigured. We moved some light poles around, but the intent's the same. I mean, it lights all the parking that we have and doesn't spill onto the neighbor's property. That's the general.
Okay.
Yeah.
Along that, is there anything along that walkway? Can you orient a light, obviously not facing into the, just so there's somewhat of a, maybe potential of a path light or something? I'm not sure what the housing authority has on their parcel. Just, we don't want a dark alleyway if somebody's parking in their night coming out of a lit parking area coming onto their property. So I don't know, maybe that's something we could work out with the housing authority.
I'd be happy to add a light there, Mr. Ryder.
Okay, I think a bollard light would work the best, low mounted. I think that's gonna give ample lighting for access through.
Sure.
Other than that, as well as happy with the 3 affordable housing components, but overall, I like the redesign. Thank you, good job by both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Eric. Like your 180. Good comment. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll echo Mr. Ryder's comment. I think that, well, it took a little unfortunateness to get here, but I think this is definitely what I think we're envisioning the hopes of how this would look. I don't really think you can ask for very much more than we're seeing here. Eliminating the need to even waive anything in the back and leaving us just with the parking space stuff to deal with, I think is a really nice device. The one thing I would say, while I appreciate the petitioner offering those, those sort of overflow spaces up to be used by the housing authority, I'd kind of assume have those extra spaces. Is this development got a name? Is it going to be called something?
935 Main Street.
So it doesn't have like some fancy name like, Shamrock Commons or anything like that, no?
No, sir, it does not.
All right. I only ask because I kind of would like to see those spaces, just something saying that they're for the development. Now, if somebody from the housing parks there, fine. But my problem or my concern would be in the reverse, which is if they feel like they can park there, if all their spaces aren't being used and they just choose to park in those overflow spaces, we aren't allowing you to park in the housing only spaces. So you could literally have housing spaces open, the 4 overflow taken up, and everybody's out of luck. You know what I mean? So I just assume see those spaces meant for the development, and then figure it out if something happens after that. But I'd like to mark that way because I just think that's a better route to making sure they actually can be used as overflow as opposed to appearing to just be part of the housing parking spaces. And if they use those first, then everybody's out of luck. It doesn't make a lot of sense. My other question is there a particular reason why they're split?
Because I asked Andy to do that. I didn't want to mess with the Tewksbury housing 20 spaces. I was afraid to push those spaces left or right. We're trying to keep them centered on that walkway to make it the shortest distance for anyone coming from the housing authority to their vehicle. Yeah. But I'm happy to accommodate whatever signage the board sees fit. And if you want to flip those spaces to the left-hand side or the right-hand side, also happy to do that. The striping is the striping. Doesn't matter if it all goes on the left or it all goes on the right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how the others feel. I mean, I guess it's okay, but if the 4 were all the way over to the left and grouped together, it just feels like it might be more apt that they get left for the overflow than if they're split up. But I don't know how everybody else feels. It doesn't matter to me that much. I just wondered if it made more sense for the four to be together.
If the rest of the board agrees, Mr. Johnson, we'd be happy to make that modification.
All right, so I'll wait and see what everybody else thinks. I'm okay either way, but that's just a thought. Otherwise, for what we've got in front of us, I'm very happy and I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I have some good things to say, Mr. Saccone and Mr. Street, and some negative comments, but I do want to say I'm very pleased to find the renderings you attached. They look great. And then they show the nice area in the back with the arborvitae's blocking the elderly housing, which is great. I was concerned with the parking for the project. I'm not quite sure we have enough. You're asking for a lot less in the waiver for what's it, like 14 or 16 spots. So that concerns me. So I don't know, and the fact that you're putting two up in that corner with the Tewksbury Housing Authority is going to almost tell people that live there, yeah, you can park up there, which is the reverse of what we're trying to do, I think. So, it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, but, I guess they're viable spots that you could use, but I just see some of the tenants that live there saying, yeah, if you can't park in front of the house, park over there in the visitor spots. And they're coming at nighttime and they may not see where they're going and they may use the Tewksbury Housing Authority spots, but hey, it is what it is, I guess. So, so one of my negative comments is, Mr. Street, I happened to read some of your comments about that the entire discussion we had was regarding the parking, but if you recall, we did not get any renderings from you in the beginning. We did not get any comments or discuss anything from the building inspector. So we had nothing else to talk about for the most part, but some of the parking. So that might have consumed some of our discussion, but it was like we didn't have the renderings to look at, and the designs and the sidewalk issue wasn't resolved. So, but again, the sidewalk you installed, Mr. Saccone, is great. It's what we asked for. The affordable housing component is great, and that's a nice added thing. But the thing is, we need to get this right. So, my biggest concern is that we have enough parking. So I'd hate to see us get to a situation where we're building this project, everybody's living in there, and we're scrambling for parking. It just seems like, to me, that we have too many units here. I know you don't want to hear that, but I just don't want to approve X number of units and then down the road saying, what do? We have X number of people there. We may get two, are they 2-bedroom units or are they 1-bedroom units?
Two bedroom.
Right. So, I mean, that may bring, a family with 2 cars and possibly 3 cars if they have a kid that's an older gentleman or an older kid that has his license. So, so I'm betwixt and between here. I know you gave us some of the concerns and some of our concerns we had, but some of the other ones are still prevalent as far as the parking, and I don't know how we deal with that, how we get moving forward, but I just don't want to see us come into a situation where we don't have it right. So, I mean, 16 parking spots is what you're looking to not give into this project, and where do people park if they have additional parking needs? Off-site somewhere, or what gives? So, but I love the project. I think it's a great addition to the town. I know you've changed some snow storage areas and taken away some of those areas, but I guess I have some of those concerns. So maybe I'll give you an opportunity to respond if you could. So.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fratalia. Andy, we added 4 spaces from the last go round. So does that leave us 16 spaces short, or are we really 12 spaces short?
So we have 2 spaces per unit dedicated to the units, and then 5 visitor spaces above and beyond that is what we're showing here. Now, I do think there's some, especially given that Mr. Saccone is planning on owning and renting these, there's some opportunities where we could designate some reserve areas. In the future, he should be very much in tune with what the residents here are experiencing from a parking perspective. So there's some areas here where we could, maybe not build them today, but they could be reserved and implemented should there be parking issues in the future. That's something we can certainly show the board in the future as well, if that pleases them.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, because I don't know if that was the answer. So 16 short, but you've got 5. So does that mean it's 11? I just feel like I still didn't hear the answer to that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Andy. Yes, please answer.
Yes. So we have 2 spaces per unit, and then 5 addition. As far as it's more complicated with the commercial, but the commercial has adequate parking. They're guaranteed 4 spaces dedicated to them. There's a handicap space that goes with the commercial use as well. Then each residential use has 2 spaces per unit that are dedicated. So 2 spaces for every unit is dedicated to that unit. And then there's 5 additional spaces on top of that for the visitor parking. So I guess if you're talking about being short, we don't have 3. I guess I don't know what the visitor spaces qualify as. So we have.
What I'm asking.
Yeah.
It's another parking space.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
what I'm asking is if each unit had the number of spaces it was supposed to have without a waiver, you would have needed 16 more, correct, than what you had originally.
Correct, if we're providing visitor parking as well, which is always something we add in. I don't think there's a requirement for that, but typically that's something that we do.
Right, but what I'm saying is by adding the 5 that you didn't have in before for visitor parking, or the additional 4, the total number of spaces that you'd be short if you were trying to do this without waivers is now down to 12?
12.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can I ask one more question, please?
Right ahead.
In the parking area that includes those new additional spaces and the housing spaces, the areas, I don't know, you don't have proposed building numbers on these, I don't think, do you? Yeah, you do. So proposed building number 10 and proposed building number 11. To the left of building 10 and to the right of building 11, those the portion where the parking lot meets what would otherwise be, I don't know, grass area or whatever. Could parking spaces be put into either of those 2 areas and then sort of fenced off so they wouldn't, be visible maybe to the back of that unit?
I think they could fit, and I also think we could still extend this long row in the back on either side. I think, a lot of times when we talk about waivers, it's if there's that balance between the overall look of the development and, the waiver request, but there's certainly some space there. I think that's what I meant when I talked about reserving them. If there are parking issues, they could be built, but you could certainly fit some here. Yeah, on either side.
So I don't want to speak for Mr. Fratalia, but I feel like if you could show us those on a plan and say, we could do it if we find that we're coming up with some parking issues. We'd like to not to, because aesthetically it's not how we like it right now. But if we see in the future that we're having parking problems, and I think that would be something where I think maybe the board might retain that, if we find out we're getting a lot of complaints that, people are parking in the housing spaces and that kind of thing, that we may say, yes, we want you to go ahead and put in those additional spaces. We might not want to put them in now, but at least then there's spaces available in the future to get you close to or near to the number you would have needed anyways. Does that make sense? Mr. Fratalia, I'll leave it back to you, but that's just seemed like it might help.
Yeah, I mean, I believe anything would help. I'm just, my concern is, looking at the plan of the street, I see you only have 1 handicap parking spot. So did we lose the handicap spot? I see a plan that shows 2, and then I see the new plan shows 1.
Yeah, so we just show the 1, and that's for the commercial use. I mean, 2 wouldn't be necessary unless I think it hit 25 spaces for the commercial use here. So we show the 1 here for the commercial space, and then there's 2 for the housing authority in the back.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. I'm looking at the parking now. Proposed building number, was it, the first building on the left, the mixed use building?
Mhm.
Where do the residents park that are gonna live there? They're gonna park next to the two commercial spots?
So there's two spaces there, and we tried to balance this out, keeping in mind some landscaping in between the parking aisles, but there would have to be, that one out of all of them doesn't necessarily have four spaces right in front for the two residential units, but there is adequate parking in that, along each side of the driveway for everybody.
I'm just thinking if I come home and wanna park somewhere, where do I park? I'm parking across the street or the next building up in order to find a spot, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think these
You know-
spaces could be dedicated, they could have numbers on them, or, that's pretty common in residential uses where each spot is assigned a certain letter or number or something like that. Something like that can be done here to make sure it's clear for everybody.
Again, I don't want to be sour grapes, Mr. Saccone, but I know you put a lot of work into this, but I'm sure you want to get it right too. And that's all I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to be a stickler for parking, but the last thing I want to do is okay a development and not have enough parking. If you can understand my concerns there, so.
I do understand your concerns. What I could do is connect these and make them fourplexes, and then the parking issue would go away, right, Andy?
Yeah.
Correct.
Why does that to me, as much as I recognize and understand your concern, Mr. Fratalia, if they were connected, doesn't make any less people likely to live there.
Right. Well, I think the way you've designed them is nice. I like the design, but
it's more
again,
appealing.
I don't think you're going to want to make them connected because that's probably not your style. So, but
it isn't, but also, I mean, it's also, any developer or any builder, they have their way, and what looks good to me may not look good to others. So I do understand your concern about the parking, and so I say to myself from the position of what's allowed and what isn't. So you mean if I just made them fourplexes, there's not a parking problem?
Sure there is.
Sure there will be.
It would be the same. Yes, and that's what I would say. I would say that I feel that the parking here is more than adequate. And if I thought that, the parking wasn't adequate, I would be building more parking. I'd be happy to put a few more spaces on the left or the right. I'm going to maintain this myself. I'm not worried about piling snow. We'll put it in trucks and take it away. We do it that way at 1390 now. But the irony I see, Mr. Fratalia, is that if I just connect those buildings, all of a sudden I don't have a parking problem. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
So I would suggest to you, as much as I recognize your concern, I'm saying that I feel that this is adequate. And based on what we do at 1390, it's the same style building, exact same style building, going to be prettier because the outside's going to be different colors, but we don't have any trouble there.
Yeah.
And that's all I can say. If you want to add 4 more spaces or 2 more to the left on the end, if you want to designate all the visitors all together, I'd be happy to do that.
We all set?
I'm all set for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just gonna jump on this real quick. 2 things. Why don't you, Andy, if you would, add those spaces on the left side, whatever you can get in there, at that island where it doesn't line up with the one across. Put a space, hello dog, put a space in there or whatever. And then draw us a plan as Mike said, show us a plan that you can have reserved spaces. And I'm looking at it here and I can see where you're probably thinking of doing it. But I'd like you to put it on paper, show it, so that there is a problem, as Mr. Saccone said. This is his place. He's going to be maintaining it. He's going to be managing it. So he'll have the right, because they're not ownership, they're rentals. He can do whatever is necessary to make this right, if there is a problem in the future. Is that right, Mr. Saccone?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Hearing none. Brian, anything online?
We have no callers, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. No one likes us. All right. Well, I was hoping we could get this done today, but we can't. Andy, do you think you'll be all set by the 22nd?
I do. I mean, I guess I'm assuming the board would like to see the technical review from DPW. So assuming that is done before that, we'll be ready to go. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yes,
right.
Mr. Fowler, that was one of my questions. I wanted to wait to, I know Mr. Hardiman wasn't able to get the IDR comments back from the last meeting, so it'd be nice to have those as well. There were some good points by people on the potential of other spots here.
Very good. Thank you.
And Mr. Ryder, I forgot, we didn't, neither Andy nor myself said that, but we have addressed every one of Kevin Hardiman's points positively.
Good.
Excellent. That's good to hear.
Thank you.
That's a good following to have, Mike.
Yes.
Have we
Very
resolved
good.
the issue with the fire department, Mr. Street? Or are they all set?
So we haven't heard from them since the initial submission, I guess.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
Okay,
As
so you
far as
have
I know,
that
there's
too.
no issues, but I haven't heard either way, I guess, is probably the way to say.
Okay.
Okay.
We received an
Chairman?
initial letter and I addressed all those in comments, and I think we have adequately addressed all the comments they had in their initial letter, but we have not heard otherwise since then. Either way since then, I should say, not otherwise.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I did have a question, if I could, for Ms. McGinty. Does she think, I know we seem to have a little bit of a, two different comments depending on where you're looking, but does she anticipate that we'll know by the time we come back to our next meeting whether or not we're dealing with a majority or a supermajority vote for this project?
Hi, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
So in my comment letter to the applicant and to the planning board, I said that this has been recommended to town council. So I haven't heard back from him yet on this application.
Okay.
So I
Could,
will be
could we
following up with
possibly
him and-
just impress to town council though that there's a decent chance that we might be looking to vote on this in 2 weeks, and that some resolution to that question would really be helpful?
Yes.
Yes, so Mr. Chairman, I will be following up with town council in between. And then, you know, I have 2 comment letters that the applicant needs for the applicant. One of the items is an outstanding, the building elevation was not submitted for the application. That's a requirement. So if they want a waiver, they need to request that. And there's several other things, so I'll look out for the applicant's response to that.
We submitted, Andy, did we not submit building plans?
Yes.
Yes.
I have one.
Yes.
You didn't
So-
get them, Anna? Anna, you didn't get any?
So I have the I have the rendering, but I did not see the building, the elevation.
Yeah, we submitted a full set of building plans.
Okay, what sheet is that? So I can double check. But
No, I submitted a full set of building plans, framing plans, plumbing plans, HVAC plans.
I didn't get a copy in my packet for this week, so
No, it wasn't submitted this week. It was submitted earlier.
I
Hasn't
don't have
changed.
it in my paperwork. So I would suggest that,
Be happy to forward it again.
yeah, just the forward again and copies for the board. Just
Oh, sure. Do you want, would you like me to print copies and deliver them, or just forward it via email?
it needs to be print. We need hard copies, just like
How
a
many-
normal submission. Yep.
How many copies would you like?
So typically it's 10, and so we need 2 large files and the smaller 11 by 14s.
Okay, so just so I understand, because I don't want to get this wrong, Anna, you want me to submit to you 10 complete copies of the building plans in two formats, 24 by 36 and 11 by 14. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't need the full plumbing, et cetera. We just need the architectural elevations. So I can certainly submit an example, but Mr. Street should have prior experience with this. It should just be like a 1 or 2 sheet for the building elevation, just to show how many stories, et cetera.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
just to clarify.
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy to bring them in again.
Okay, yeah, because in this package just was the rendering, it wasn't the elevation, so.
Right.
No problem.
Okay.
What else?
Yep.
Anything else that I can do to help?
Yeah.
That's a requirement of a
Saccone,
special
Mr. Saccone,
permit,
while you're here,
so,
right?
you know, it's not
Oh,
new.
okay.
This is a special permit requirement. Mr.
All right.
Street should be aware of that.
We're
Yeah.
being funny now. Come on. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we're there's no negativity in my comment, Anna. I aim to please.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Saccone, while we're discussing, I believe you had an outstanding bond that you're trying to get back from us for the project on Main Street. I think I've seen did you enclose your dumpsters? I think wasn't that one of the outstanding questions you had on that project? So I see you've done that, so I think you're probably entitled to getting your bond back.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Anna, I think wasn't that one of the outstanding questions you had up on the project on Main Street? The dumpsters were not enclosed, but they are enclosed now.
You're referring to a different application.
Yeah.
Um,
Mike knows what I'm talking about, so.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
We did that. I think it might have been 2 years ago, Mr. Fratalia.
Okay.
Yeah, the dumpster is fenced in. I would have to look into that application if the bond was released. I don't know Mr. Fratelli off the top of my head, so.
I don't believe it. I
released.
don't believe it was. I think because I know
Okay.
it wasn't, but I think whatever. Just
Yeah, that's a separate
just an
application,
FYI,
just for
Mr.
public
Saccone.
record. So,
Thank you.
yeah, that's a separate issue, but they
Yep.
certainly. And Mr. Saccone, please, reach out to our office when
Yeah,
you're ready for that.
So we can take care of that outside of this.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not involved
you.
in this, just for
Right.
the public to understand. So.
Right. All right. So Andy, you know what you need?
Yes. Yep.
Yep. And Mike, you know what you have to get us, give it to Anna. So
Yes.
we need a motion to continue this
7:30?
to 7:30 on the 22nd of March.
So
moved, Mr. Chairman.
On the motion, all in
Second.
favor, say aye. Thank you.
Aye.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Fatalia,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you to the planning board. Good night.
Right.
Good night.
Yeah. We're almost up to the bewitching hour.
Yes.
How are
We're
we, Mr.
there.
Johnson?
We are
Yes,
there.
we are, Mr. Chair.
We are there.
We have only
Okay.
one outstanding issue.
What?
I said we have only one outstanding issue.
What is that?
Correspondence, right?
Yes.
I was just gonna say that. That's all. Correspondence. Anything, Anna? Other
Yes,
than,
Mr. Chairman. So,
'cause I
So I
don't
sent a
see-
memo to the board. I just want to state for the record, if anyone from the public wants a copy, please contact the community development and we can provide a copy, or if they would like to stop by, just so they can read the whole thing, if there's any questions on it.
Okay.
Because it's a little hard to summarize it all at once. But there was recently changes that Governor Baker signed into law, effective on January 14th of this year, 2021. That changes 40A. And this memo is addressing changes to Section 9, which is the planning board hearing process.
Right.
And so there's three different types of situations where the board would then vote as a simple majority instead of the 3/4 votes that happens. So for example, if it's a 5-member board, just, for the public to understand, typically it's a 4 out of 5 vote is for the 3/4 votes. If it's going to be simple majority, it would be 3 out of 2 to pass a public hearing, just to kind of explain that. I don't know if you want me to go through the whole thing or just to address any questions.
No, as you said earlier, if anybody wants to review it, they can pick a copy of it up from the Community Development Office. I think we know what's going on with this. I don't think we have to rehash it today verbally.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I sent, or I left a voicemail to Ms. McGinty earlier, so I'll just mention it now. Only in this letter she sent us, at least initially, I know just now we're talking to town council about it, but she basically gave us sort of a call on 935 Main Street.
Right.
That basically made it, the call at the time, I know it's under review now, but was that it was going to be a simple majority. I had asked her in the voicemail if perhaps going forward, at least for a while, that she could give us that kind of determination call on any of the projects, whether it will or won't apply to any of the projects that would seem to fall in that sort of town center or commercial closeness category.
Yep.
So that we know whether or not and why the project does or does not trigger that, just for a while until everybody kind of gets used to it.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yes, so Mr. Chairman, I can certainly do that. And I will certainly inform the board if I'm seeking guidance from town council on the applications to review it further.
Okay.
Some of the applications will be very clear. So in particular, item B, mixed use development, that's where my understanding is that applies to Tewksbury now as our zoning is. And, that's when it's in a commercial activity area. So that could be in town center or another commercial location. There's a component of, it's a mixed use development. It's in a commercial district. And then the third key point is that it has an affordable component. That's what's going to trigger that simple majority, and then for us to review it with town council.
Yep.
So just so the public understands that, but yeah. So for the next meeting, I hope to get a response on 935 Main Street from town council.
Very good. Anna, it sounds like you have your finger right on it. You're all set. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Board members, anything else?
All set, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Anna.
I'd like to have Mr. Fattalia, can we have a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Fowler. How's that?
Second.
Sounds terrific. On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I oppose. The ayes have it. Mr. Ryder?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Who are we missing? Me.
Mr.
Fattalia,
Mr.
aye.
Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
Everyone said aye.
Yeah. Now I can go downstairs and say goodbye to my company.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. Good night.
Good evening, everyone.